We are creating opportunities for our youth to develop critical skills, contributing meaningful opportunities to their communities, and building a brighter future. I would like to thank my colleagues who were signed on to this bill, and thank you, Chair Joseph and Chair Lewis, for hearing it.
Thank you, Councilmember Riley. Finally, I would like to remind everyone who wishes to testify in person today that you must fill out a witness form, which is located on the desk of Sergeant at Arms near the entrance of this room. Please fill out the form even if you have already registered in advance that you'll be testifying in person today. If you wish to testify on Introduction 1057 or Resolution 94A, 251, or 373, please indicate on the witness slip whether you're here to testify in favor of or in opposition to the legislation. I also want to point out that we will not be voting on any legislation today. To allow as many people as possible to testify, testimony will be limited to 3 minutes per person, whether you're testifying in person or on Zoom. I'm also going to ask my colleagues to limit their questions and comments to 5 minutes. Please note that witnesses who are here in person will testify before those who are signed into the Zoom webinar. I will now turn it over to Committee Counsel Nadia Jean-Francois to administer the oath.
Before you do that, can you recognize Caban on Zoom?
I also would like to recognize Councilmember Caban on Zoom.
Good afternoon. In accordance with the rules of the council, I will administer the affirmation to the witnesses from the mayoral administration. I will call on each of you individually for a response. Please raise your right hand. If you could raise your right hands, please. Thank you. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before these committees and to respond honestly to council member questions? Despina Zarakis, Sarah Kokuzo, and Melissa Sisko. Thank you. You may begin your testimony.
Please press your button.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Joseph, Chair Lewis, and all the members of the Education and Women and Gender Equity Committees here today. I am Despina Zaharakis, Senior Executive Director of the Office of School Wellness Programs at New York City Public Schools. Joining me is Sarah Kokuzo, Director of Health Education in the Office of School Wellness Programs. We appreciate the opportunity to update you on our work to support sexual health education as part of a comprehensive quality health education in New York City schools, which supports our Chancellor's commitment to promoting wellness. In addition, we are pleased to update you on the implementation of the 2018 recommendations of the Sex Ed Task Force. New York City Public Schools is proud that we mandate the inclusion of sexual health topics as part of the one-semester health class required for middle school students and the one semester required for high school students. The inclusion of sexual health education goes beyond the New York State requirement for comprehensive health education and is something we in New York City Public Schools have mandated since 2011. Comprehensive, medically accurate, and age-appropriate health education from kindergarten through high school is a critical part of a student's education. As in the classroom and in society, students must be prepared to make healthy, informed choices, develop nurturing relationships, and thrive in a diverse and challenging world. Health education provides students with the skills and knowledge to be able to do that. We have made great progress over the years to ensure all our students receive health education, but we also know that we have more work to do. I would like to thank the Council for its long-standing commitment to ensuring that New York City Public School students receive this critical instruction. New York State requires health education at each grade level. In the elementary grades, health education must be provided every year, either incorporated into regular classroom instruction or delivered by a cluster teacher. As I mentioned earlier, in middle school and again in high school, students are required to have one comprehensive health education course with 54 hours of instruction taught by a certified health education teacher. New York State also requires instruction on HIV in grades K through 12. New York City has even more rigorous requirements in this area. Students must also receive lessons each year on HIV from a New York City specific curriculum. including 5 lessons each year in grades K to 6 and 6 lessons each year in grades 7 through 12. To support health education instruction, including sexual health topics in grades 6 through 12, New York City Public Schools recommends curricula that align with national and New York State health education standards. We identify and recommend curricula through a formal review process with education and medical experts and in consultation with families and community members. Here's one example of how this review and recommendation process works. In fall 2023, the Office of School Wellness Programs launched a newly updated HIV curriculum, Growing Up and Staying Safe. We engaged a broad group of stakeholders in a multi-year design, pilot, and feedback process, with particular emphasis on communities that have been most impacted by the HIV epidemic. The resulting curriculum is student-centered, culturally responsive, and LGBTQ inclusive, in addition to reflecting advances in HIV prevention and treatment guidelines. It includes engaging lesson materials in multiple languages for our English language learners and is accompanied by teacher training, including guidance on supporting students with disabilities and family education resources. Additionally, with the support of Councilmember Botcher and ACT UP New York, we established an agreement with the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to work together on a regular review and update to the curriculum at least every 5 years. We have seen this through the this thorough development process pay off in an extremely successful curriculum launch. In the 2023-24 school year, 3,233 unique New York City Public Schools staff members completed training on the new Growing Up and Staying Safe curriculum. The free digital curriculum has been accessed by tens of thousands of users, not only in New York City, but also from school districts and states across the country, such as Portland and Washington, the State of Washington Education Board. New York City Public Schools currently recommends the following curricula. For elementary grades, K to 5, Health Smart. For middle school grades, Middle School Health Smart, and selected lessons from Draw the Line, Respect the Line, an evidence-based sexual health curriculum. For high school grades, High School Health Smart, Reducing the Risk, an evidence-based sexual health curriculum, and Understanding Self-Identity, which complements Reducing the Risk to support the inclusion of LGBTQ youth. In all grades, Growing Up and Staying Safe, New York City K-12 HIV education curriculum provides the required annual HIV lessons. New York City Public Schools provides free training, supplemental lesson plans, and additional resources to help teachers provide health lessons that are LGBTQ affirming and inclusive of all students. Within each of our recommended curricula, students have opportunities to develop skills related to communication and relationships, setting and protecting boundaries, negotiation, stress management, advocacy, goal setting, and resisting negative social pressures. They apply those skills as they learn about specific topics, including puberty, identity, violence prevention, emotional and mental health, and more. New York City Public Schools recognize the importance of individual values and the diversity of our families' perspectives and identities. Parents can opt their children out of certain prevention lessons, but not out of all sexual health lessons. The Office of School Wellness Programs provides free training and curricula citywide throughout the year to help teachers to be prepared, confident, and knowledgeable to provide health instruction in alignment with our Chancellor's commitment to strengthening comprehensive teacher support. Each year, we expand our reach and update our training offerings, including both live, virtual, and on-demand trainings to meet teacher scheduling needs. In 2022-23 and 23-24, a total of 5,454 New York City Public Schools staff attended at least one of the 178 sexual health education, professional learning opportunities offered by our office. Thanks to the City Council, we began public reporting of health education instruction beginning in 2016. Our most recent annual report on health education instruction for 2023-24 school year indicates a few key findings. Virtually all, 99.7% of last year's 12th graders met the high school health education requirement. 58% of 8th graders were provided the required course and instructional hours in middle school grades, representing an increase of 2.6% from the 2022-23 school year and a 20.8% increase from 2017-18. In 2023-24, an additional 24% of students were scheduled for a health education course, but did not meet the 54-hour requirement. 64.9% of students in grades 6 through 12 received the required number of HIV lessons, an increase of 21.3 percentage points from the previous year. There were 135 licensed health educators teaching in New York City schools, about 1% of the 14,162 total staff assigned to teach health education. We know there are teachers who are certified in health education, but they are teaching under a different license. For example, we know many physical education teachers are also certified in health educations and are assigned to also teach health education. However, they are teaching under a physical education license, as students need that course every year they are in school, so the need for physical education teachers is greater. We are continuously seeking ways to raise awareness of the gaps in implementation that persist in providing health education to students. Given our Chancellor's renewed commitment to student wellness, we aim to continue to focus and commit to the programs that we had begun as part of the Sex Ed Task Force recommendations to build more robust sexual health education for New York City public school students. As part of our efforts to increase understanding and raise awareness about the importance of health education among both educators and the public, we released a set of informational materials for a broad audience in fall 2024. This includes information on the results of a 4-year research study funded by New York Community Trust Grant and conducted by an external evaluation firm about the impact of health education on student health in New York City. In addition to the research results, we also developed and released a set of 3 videos that show health education in action at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. By making these materials available on the New York City Public Schools website and including them as part of ongoing communication to districts, principals, and teachers, our goal is to provide concrete next steps for families, school leaders, and others who want to ensure that students are receiving the benefits of high-quality health education in their schools and districts. Now we wanted to share with you one of these videos to demonstrate what quality health ed looks like in action. Thank you.
Meanwhile, let me recognize Councilmember Hanks while we work on our technical difficulty.
She can't really figure it out.
Oh, yeah, you have subtitles, okay. Can we restart the video, please?
Apologies, but we can't get the sound to work, so we're just going to have the subtitles.
Oh, yeah, very. Hi, Lincoln.
Sometimes it's not always easy being a kid because when you're a kid, people might bully you.
We struggle with bullying, social media, as well as mental health.
I get really mad when people make fun of me.
Peer pressures. Kids my age are like drinking, vaping, and like smoking.
It's hard. It's hard to be at school and get all the work done and still prioritize things like sleep. It's challenging.
Me and my friends have dealt with a lot of drama.
There's a lot of like drama my parents find kind of silly, but at my age it's like a kind of a big deal.
Me and my friends are always on our phone. Like, it really is hard to like not be on it because it's just so addictive to you.
Every morning we wake up, check our phones, so everything on social media impacts us dramatically.
At least in my case, like all these girls with like really perfect bodies, like super skinny. It's kind of hard not to feed into like this thought that I need to look like that, I need to be perfect.
So yeah, there's like a lot of stuff, but like a lot of like emotional stuff go into it. You face like big decisions every day.
Going up that balloon, let it out.
Every day, students make decisions that affect their health, well-being, and ability to learn. That's why health education is an important priority in New York City public schools. Health education is an essential academic subject where students learn the knowledge and skills they need to care for their minds, bodies, and their relationships with others. In elementary school, health education is required every year in grades K through 5, with a recommendation of 45 minutes per week. In middle school, health education is required every day for 1 semester. And in high school, health education is required every day for 1 semester.
It's super important that our students' needs are met, social emotionally, academically, and physically. And one big piece of that is ensuring that our health education programming is really robust and that they understand the importance of taking care of themselves, taking care of their hearts and their minds and their bodies.
So how do you think this girl is feeling? The most rewarding aspect of health education is actually seeing my students put all the skills that they learn daily into practice. Because if they're putting it into practice in elementary school, they're going to continue that through middle school, and the goal is always to continue these healthy behaviors into adulthood.
A health teacher does a lot of work around healthy relationships, healthy friendships, setting boundaries, making sure that you're clear in terms of what you need from your friends and what your expectations are, and that you show up the way that you want to be treated as well.
I think the research is pretty clear about the benefits of healthier, happier students and their ability to perform well academically. We're focusing on skill development and communication and real-world activities and resources that they can take and use when they leave the class immediately and then in their future as well.
We've learned a lot of stuff in health class.
I learned to set goals for myself.
I learned about ways to calm myself, and I also learned how to socialize and talk with my peers.
We learned empathy.
To prioritize sleep.
How to check our food labels and make sure we're eating healthy stuff.
We have learned about like both online and in-person resources where we can go to like help ourselves, which is like really great.
Every day we are striving for healthier students because healthier students will be able to advocate for themselves, conquer bullying, choose better eating habits, right? We are striving for students who understand the connection between their mental and physical health. And once those students understand the importance of health education, they could take all that information back to the community, and now we have a healthier community.
So thank you, and I'm glad we got to see the video. So this is our why, our collective why, and now I wanted to go back to focus on the how. We're going to get this done for every child in New York City. We know there are some barriers to providing students with required health education, which include a lack of understanding about the components and importance of quality health education by educators and families. Many only know health education from the instruction they received in school. For schools not implementing a one-semester model, many do not program for the required 54 hours. For example, some schools are implementing a yearly model of 1 period a week. That would only provide about 27 hours of instruction. We started checking for the 54 hours of health education in middle school grades in 2017. New York State had updated course time requirement guidance on remote and hybrid remote instruction due to COVID in 2019 and 20, and 2020 and 21. So we had to recommunicate and reestablish the 54-hour requirement for teachers, schools, and superintendents and their teams. Small school size is also a challenge to staffing a full-time health education teacher, which is why we do continuous outreach to teachers assigned to teach health education to recruit them for professional learning opportunities and to ensure they have updated curricula and instructional materials. We also reach out to school and district leaders and their teams about the importance of their instructional staff attending training and having the most up-to-date instructional materials. In addition to teachers and school leaders, we are working with superintendent teams to foster stronger understanding of and support for health and sexual health education requirements. As part of this work, we share data on students meeting health education and HIV lesson requirements with superintendent teams on a regular basis and encourage them to follow up with their schools. We are also increasing the number of on-demand teacher training opportunities, and we provide schools with translated lesson overviews and other information to better engage families on these important topics. The Sexual Health Education Task Force was created by Local Law 90 in 2017 to review the implementation of sexual health education for K-12 students in New York City public schools. In 2018, the task force released a report with recommendations to promote comprehensive sexual health education in New York City public schools. As a member of the task force, the Office of School Wellness Programs participated in thoughtful and thorough recommendation, appreciated, sorry, the thoughtful and thorough recommendations and began implementing them promptly. Since then, we have faced significant challenges to this work, including budget constraints for Health Ed Works, schools moving to remote and hybrid models of instruction due to COVID-19, and city leadership changes. Despite these challenges, we have made substantial progress implementing the task force's 11 recommendations. For recommendations 1 through 3, prioritizing a culture of sexual wellness and inclusivity in all schools. To address these recommendations, we developed the first ever New York City Health Education Scope and Sequence for grades K through 12, released in 2019, which lays out a set of citywide expectations that includes LGBTQ inclusive sexual health education. We're also continuing to work on building awareness with districts, schools, and community members about the importance of sexual health education, as I described above. Recommendations 4 through 6. Ensuring students are served by well-equipped and supported health education instructors. To address this, we have expanded our free training opportunities for teachers, including both live and self-guided options that enable us to extend our professional learning for teachers. We also partnered with Lehman College to provide 78 teachers with an advanced certificate in health education. Recommendations 7 through 8. Improving the content, substance, and methods of sexual health education. To address this, the health education scope and sequence includes guidance and expectations for growth and development topics in grades K through 5 and sexual health in grades 6 through 12, including the recommended number of lessons at each grade level. We're also proud to have released the newly updated curriculum in fall 2023, Growing Up and Staying Safe, New York City K through 12 HIV education curriculum. We engaged a broad group of stakeholders in the development and review process, including students, teachers, content experts, and advocates. Recommendations 9 through 11. Strengthening accountability and reporting. To address this, we report annually on compliance in a publicly available City Council mandated Local Law 14 and 15, issued in 2016 report. We also applied for and received funding in 2020 from the New York Community Trust to hire an external evaluator to conduct research on the effectiveness of health education in New York City public schools. The research concluded in 2024, and we're in the process of sharing the recommendations for improvement with educators and community members. We are passionate, thoughtful, and focused on the work ahead to ensure that all New York City public school students are receiving high-quality health education that meets New York State Ed requirements. We appreciate the Council's leadership, advocacy, and partnership on these important issues and look forward to answering your questions. Lastly, I would like to turn to the included legislation, Intro 1057, which would require New York City public schools to report on journalism programs in schools. We believe in the importance of developing pathways for students to express their voice through school newspapers that can be shared with their communities. New York City Public Schools is working with the Youth Journalism Coalition to offer a journalism curriculum to 30 schools in the 2025-26 school year and hope to expand to offer more opportunities for students. We're looking forward to working with the Council to align on reporting on data we capture within our systems. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. What specific steps have New York City Public Schools taken to ensure comprehensive sexual health education is being implemented across all grades?
So comprehensive, in grades 2, 4, and 5, the students are studying growth, not necessarily sexual health education, correct? Sarah's our health education expert. In grades 6 through 12, comprehensive sexual health education is included as part of health education. We try to ensure all students receive that health education. Unfortunately, we do not capture the lessons on sexual health education within the health education curriculum.
Why not?
We don't, good question. We don't really capture lessons within a particular curriculum. We do capture, for example, HIV lessons because they're separate and must be taught every year, et cetera. Sexual health is part of comprehensive health education.
For the HIV lessons, when families opt out of it, what is the option?
Sarah can respond to that.
Yeah, so families can't opt out of the entire curriculum, just like they can't opt out of the entire sexual health unit or health education class. They can opt out of lessons on prevention methods. So these are methods of pregnancy and STI prevention. And again, that's true for both the general sex ed lessons as well as the HIV lessons. Those are, that's a state requirement that parents have the right to opt out of those lessons.
Where do they normally get the information if they're not getting it from you?
Yeah, so we have letters in all 10 languages that the New York City Public Schools translates into that we share with schools to send home to families. So those include overview of what the lessons include and which lessons are available for them to opt out and the instructions for them to do that.
What lessons are they allowed to opt out in and which ones they're not allowed to opt out?
Yeah, so they can opt out of any lesson that has to do with things like condom use, PrEP, and contraception, so things that deal with methods of prevention. They can't opt out of lessons on abstinence, and they can't opt out of the general other lessons that have to do with things like washing your hands, right, at the elementary level, or healthy relationships, say, at the middle school level.
Those are more universal versus...
Exactly.
Okay. How is the curriculum for sexual health education put together? Is it centralized or does it vary from school to school? School teacher, how is that?
Yeah, I can talk a little more about that. So as Despina mentioned in her testimony, we have a K-12 health education scope and sequence, which outlines the key topics or the scope and the logical progression or the sequence of the essential health knowledge, skills, and behaviors that students should learn at each grade level. This is based on state and national instructional standards, including the National Sex Education Standards, and it aligns with our policies and the state policies. So teachers are expected to plan their health education course based on this scope and sequence, which is standard across the city. And it includes a number of recommended lessons. So for sexual health, for example, in the middle school, there's 20 lessons out of the overall 70 to 80 or so that are recommended, and the same at the high school level. To help schools provide high-quality health ed, we also recommend curricula that we have vetted through the extensive review process that Despina shared earlier, which includes the sexual health education curricula. So these are lessons that are skills-based, medically accurate, age-appropriate, and inclusive, and we're constantly reviewing to make sure that if there's any updates to new information or updates to new practices that we know would be more beneficial to our students, that we can make those updates. Schools may choose to use curriculum other than what we recommend. With few exceptions, we don't mandate curricula in any subject area. Given the diversity of the school communities and the range of needs of our students, we think that is a decision that makes the most sense for a school community to decide. That said, we do know that many schools do use and attend training on our curriculum. So our trainings are, both general about health education and specifically how to use our curriculum. And so, given the number of people that have attended the trainings, we know that there is, there are a lot of teachers who are using the recommended curricula, but it's not mandated.
And then when they don't use the recommended curriculum, is that curriculum approved by someone, or?
That would be at the school level.
On the administration?
Yes, yeah.
And out of the 54 hours that's mandated, are we meeting that mandate? And how do we report on that?
Oh, I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't.
On the 54 hours that's mandated, are we meeting the mandate?
We are meeting the mandate for 99.7% of high school students. We are meeting the mandate for 58% of middle school students. And that is where we must focus our work. We, as an office, believe that health education provides, as I said, the skills that students will need for the rest of their lives. It's not just content knowledge. But I think we're happy that there have been gains, but we're not happy with, where we are. We know we have a lot of work ahead of us. 58% of students meeting requirements, the 54-hour requirement at the middle school level, is something that we need to work on. And we're working on it with schools, with teachers, superintendents, superintendent teams, central offices, to make sure folks understand the requirement, how they can meet the requirement, and the importance of meeting the requirement.
Are you working with parent advocates as well? Are you working with your SLT, your PTA?
Absolutely. We not only do we have parent materials, but we also support the Citywide Wellness Advisory Council for the wellness policy, and all CEC members are invited to participate. That is run by one of our deputy our senior director. And health education policy, curriculum, content, importance is shared at those meetings and annually. And we also have student youth advocates that we also share the same sort of messaging. And I think we try to be as comprehensive as possible. The messaging to everyone is, this is what they require, this is what the why. These are the requirements, these are the resources, these are the required, recommended curricula, and this is the training. So everything is just a comprehensive package, and that package goes to teachers, superintendents, it goes to principals, it goes to sort of even the public. This is the best curriculum. We want parents to be advocates for our work.
And is language access provided for parents who English is not their first language?
Yes. Sarah can talk a little bit to that.
Yeah, all of our written materials are translated into 10 languages, and our the Citywide Wellness Council meetings are also translation services are provided so that any parent can attend.
Okay, thank you. What measures are in place to ensure that sexual health education is inclusive for LGBTQ plus perspectives?
Sure, I can talk about that. So our scope and sequence explicitly outlines, as I mentioned, the content that students should learn at every grade level, and that includes what age-appropriate content they should learn related to LGBTQ identities. So, starting out very foundationally in kindergarten, we all have things that make us unique and special. Moving on up to, by middle school, you're learning more specifically about concepts and terms related to our identities, gender and sexual orientation, and by high school, learning more about safer sex methods and other, more specific topics that older students need. So the scope and sequence very clearly outlines how topics that really center and include LGBTQ students are included at each step at each grade of the curriculum. And the curricula we recommend also, use inclusive language, include variety of images and examples, so that students can hopefully see themselves in the curriculum, including our LGBTQ students.
Is there any overlap in this with the LGBTQ curriculum inside of New York City Public Schools? Is there any overlap? You're talking about like the New York City Public School has an LGBTQ curriculum. Is there overlap with this?
Yeah,
lesson?
so we there isn't overlap in terms of the curriculum content. That one is more, I think, often used in social studies classes. There are certainly themes that overlap, such as advocacy. So advocacy is one of the core health education skills that students learn throughout their time. So as an example, in our new HIV curriculum, the history of HIV advocacy is, a big topic, which also shows up in the Hidden Voices curriculum.
And we also, we also have trainings not only in comprehensive health education, including sexual health education, trainings in sexual health education and LGBTQ focused training for our health teachers. So we want to make sure, and the messaging crosses across all trainings, but we really want to make sure that we are advocates, we are supporters, and we really want to make sure that our students are supported at their schools. And we can do so by messaging to their teachers, their principals, their superintendents.
Thank you. Describe the training and professional development that teachers receive to teach sexual health education.
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about that. So we provide support for health and sexual health education through a lot of training and professional development, as well as follow-up support with teachers who attend the trainings. So we offered 204 training opportunities last year, including 5 new interactive self-guided courses, which gave teachers additional options and flexibility. So if they can't make the live time, they can still take an interactive self-guided course on their own time. So there's currently 3 series of courses that we recommend teachers go through for each grade level. So the first series is an Introduction to Health Education series, which again includes some self-guided and some live elements. This also includes a separate course on strategies for LGBTQ affirming classrooms. Then the second series is called either Growth and Development at the elementary level or Sexual Health at the high school level. So this is a series that specifically focuses on teaching the recommended sexual health curricula and strategies for things like creating a safe space in the classroom, for having challenging discussions, how to answer challenging questions from students, things like that. And then the third series is specific to our new health HIV education curriculum, Growing Up and Staying Safe. And we're also working on developing a 4th training series that focuses on mental health education, since we know that that's both required by the state and just a huge need for our students and teachers to know how to teach it effectively. So that's sort of the next area that we're tackling in terms of a training series. And then we work with partner organizations to offer other workshops that we don't offer. So during our professional development days, like on Election Day this year, where we have thousands of teachers attend on that single day, we had several different organizations that came in, like Advocates for Youth, One Love, Day One, among others, who could offer sort of more 102 level, if you will, sexual health education workshops for our teachers.
How often is that professional development required?
There's not a requirement for our specific professional development. We recommend that teachers are trained at least every 3 to 4 years as a refresher. Professional development is required in terms of teachers, maintaining their professional certification, but not specifically our trainings.
How many hours of professional development are required for each school year?
I would need to get back to you, but I believe it's 75
I'm not sure.
every 5 years, but we can get back to you. That's state requirement. Yes, that's one thing, but I think that, I want to be I want to take this opportunity to say how proud I am of our office in professional learning. Folks flock to our trainings. We have thousands of teachers on Election Day, Chancellor's Conference Day in June, and hundreds of teachers, close to 1,000, in high school PD Day in January. In addition, we have thousands of teachers trained each year in Move to Improve. Not just health and sexual education, but we're also sort of PE and movement and physical activity. But professional learning is something we do well. We make sure it's thorough, it's inclusive, it's comprehensive, and it's able to be implemented at the school level with the greatest of ease. Because it's one thing to go to a professional learning session and not go to school and be able to implement. We want to make sure that those teachers hit the ground running the next day. So we're highly proud. That's one area where we're very successful. And of course, the messaging is always there. By the way, these are the requirements. Talk to your principal. Program students. Tell them to program students. And this is why it's important. Giving them, I think, building teacher leadership is also as a part of what we do in our trainings, in terms of they need to be advocates for health education and quality sexual education in their building.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Councilmember Lee Sanchez on Zoom and Councilmember Shaker. Councilmember Chair Lewis, I'm going to pass it along to you, and we'll bounce off back and forth.
Thank you, Chair Joseph. I'd like to briefly shift our attention to the intersection of sexual education and intimate partner violence. Given the ongoing discussions around sexual health education and its implementation, how much of the current curriculum is dedicated to addressing issues of domestic and intimate partner violence, and are educators provided with the tools and training to navigate these sensitive topics effectively?
I'm muted. So glad you brought up that connection because we agree that it's extremely, extremely important. So at all grade levels, in an age-appropriate way, violence-related topics are included in the curriculum. And in middle and high school, intimate partner violence and related topics are included in the sexual health unit. I think that, topics related to things like boundaries, clear communication, respecting other people's boundaries, healthy friendships, right? Those are the things that we sort of focus on in the younger grades, and then as it gets older, looking at romantic and dating relationships and preventing violence.
Thank you for that. Research findings from the Journal of Adolescent Health supports the inclusion of IPV education as part of a broader curriculum to improve social emotional learning and promote healthier, respectful interpersonal dynamics, as you just shared, and should be included as a core component of sexual education. So can you share with us, are these considerations actively incorporated into the development of the curricula that you just shared? And if not, what barriers exist to the integration of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say this is an area where we see a lot of buy-in from teachers as well. They know it's important. They see it among their students, and they know the value of it. And so it's really just making sure that they have the quality instructional materials to do it. So it is absolutely included in our scope and sequence and in our recommended curriculum for in the sexual health unit.
Thank you. Shifting focus slightly, currently New York State education law, specifically sections 803A and 803B, mandates age-appropriate human trafficking education for students in grades K through 8. However, there's a noticeable gap for high school students in grades 9 through 12. What curricula currently exists to address human trafficking prevention and abduction awareness for high school students?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do include human trafficking in our high school scope and sequence. It is explicitly one of the topic areas that should be covered in the sexual health unit. I would have to get back to you on specific lessons. I would say we are always on the lookout for new curricula that address emerging issues like this. So it is an expectation that it's taught, and I think there's definitely room to grow on having materials available.
Okay. And how are high school educators and administrators currently equipped to provide this critical information that you said that they have some of it? If the state were to mandate an expansion of this instruction to include grades 9 through 12, what steps would the DOE take to develop and implement such curricula effectively?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful in giving additional guidance, right? So for grades K to 8, the introduction of Aaron's Law has really helped us sort of analyze whether our K to 8 lessons are meeting these requirements around preventing sexual abuse. And so I think that would certainly be helpful at the high school level as well, just to have a more standardized set of expectations for schools, and that hopefully the curriculum and resources would also follow.
Okay. And we have a process. Anytime new directives or needs come through the state or through another avenue, within our office, we have, structures that allow us to come together, look at what is actually being asked, look at what we have, look at what needs to be developed. So there's a process. We've done this in the past, like Aaron's Law. When that came out, what are we doing to make sure that we're implementing in New York City?
Okay. How is DOE addressing gaps identified in the 2018 Sexual Health Education Task Force report? And if you could also just include which of the 11 recommendations from the 2018 Task Force report were implemented?
Sure. Okay, so I think in Despina's testimony, she talked a little bit about sort of the groupings of recommendations, and each recommendation, I will say, has multiple parts. So I would say, we have at least partially addressed all recommendations, with some that we were more able to complete than others, which is why we're so excited that the task force has been relaunched so that we can continue to work on the ones that haven't been fully implemented. So for the first 3 recommendations around prioritizing a culture of wellness and inclusivity, the work we did to establish the citywide scope and sequence was a really big part of that, of meeting that, those recommendations, as well as our continued work with building awareness with districts, schools, and community members. And I think, again, creating that culture of sexual wellness isn't something we can do alone, right? And so that's why I think the task force is going to be so critical in continuing that work so that we have buy-in from everyone. For recommendations 4 through 6, ensuring students are served by well-equipped and supported health education instructors. Again, this is one where in many ways we've addressed the recommendations by expanding our free training opportunities, including more flexible options, partnering with Lehman College to provide 78 more teachers with advanced certificates in health education. And this is also an area where there's still more work to do because because of the challenges and the barriers that Despina brought up around small schools, how can we, identify different models of staffing teachers or things that will help us to actually make sure that every single school has a high-quality health education teacher.
Right.
And then for the last 2 recommendations around accountability, as we shared, we do publicly report on our data, and we also were really excited to be able to conduct our research, which you have, the handouts that you all got are the results of that research.
78 teachers receiving advanced certification is a very low number. So how are you all trying to scale?
How long?
Do you want to talk about the Health Ed Works?
This is from recommendations
Yes.
4 through 6?
Yep.
So we mentioned that there are only 135 licensed teachers in New York City, although there are more certified, but licensed. So one of the ways we thought of increasing the number of licensed teachers and certified teachers was to partner with Lehman, give them the opportunity to take 12 or 18 credits and get this sort of secondary certification. The program was rigorous. They really did attend multiple semesters to earn their credits. We paid for it. And then there was a change in the funding for Health Ed Works, and we didn't have that funding anymore, so that's why we stopped that. And in addition to that, I think there were also some changes in the requirements by New York State for teachers to just be able to get that additional certification.
All right, and in recommendations 9 through 12 in your testimony, you stated that Local Law 14 and 15 of 2016 mandated for a report to the council. Then you hired an evaluator to conduct the research, and that started in 2020 and ended in 2024. Why did it take so long?
So, right, the researchers was, the basic question was, what are the qualities of a good quality health education program? What should be in place? And how does a quality health education program impact students? So that was sort of that. It was qualitative. It was also quantitative. On the research, frankly, when the local law reports come out, we use it to communicate with schools and superintendents and central offices to say, hey, this is where we are. This is where your school is. This is where your schools are, superintendent. This is where we are as a city, to central offices, to be able to advocate for communication and for support to have students programmed for health education at the middle school level, because that's our deficit area. That's where we're working most. So it's a way of sharing data and using it to advocate for what we want all New York City public school students to have. So it's a tool for us. And we point to it in our communications with the field.
All right, and will the new task force involve implementing these recommendations for the 2018 report?
Yes, a big picture. The first meeting of the task force is Monday, the 9th.
Okay.
So, we participate. There are principals, there are teachers, educators, there are health professionals, et cetera, that will come together. I think that Sarah can speak to the specifics, but they're re-upping the task force, and I think the recommendations would be one place to start. Like, where are we, folks, right? With what we recommended, and what does the work ahead look like?
Thank you for that. According to the most recent report submitted to the Council on Local Law 14 of 2016, 65% of students grades 6 through 12 received the required number of lessons in HIV and education. And I think you highlighted some of this earlier. How many and what percentage of students opted out of HIV/AIDS instructions in 2023, 2024?
So, opt-outs are only captured at the school level. We don't capture them centrally.
And why is that?
So that's practice.
Like, wouldn't that help with your data?
Sorry?
Wouldn't that help with your data as well, if you all were collecting that information as well?
I think, look, that's something for us to think about because, again, as a former principal, it was with me and my families. That's where the opt-out level was, and that's where it stayed. I know that there's been interest in the council questions, the submitted questions. There is interest in sort of understanding the data, how many kids are opting out. So I think that's something that we can take back to,
Take it to your meeting on December 9th?
And let's see, yeah. But I understand the interest, wanting to know like how many students are not getting the full lesson sort of complement.
Thank you. One last question. According to the most recent report submitted to the Council on Local Law 15 of 2016, of the 14,162 instructors assigned to a health course during the 2023-2024 school year, only 1,998, or 14%, attended at least one professional development training on sexual health education provided by DOE during the school years of 2022, 2023, and 2023 and 2024. What steps is DOE taking to address the low percentage of instructors attending professional development training on sexual health education?
So let me talk a little bit about the 14,000 teachers, because that's a little bit of a shocking figure, right? And I just want to put it out there. The data captures anyone who is teaching a health education class, one class. So at the elementary level, many classroom teachers also teach health education. So if an elementary school has, 70 teachers, each one of them teaches their class health education, you'd have 70 health education teachers. Okay. So that's a lot of the data. When you look at the sort of grade breakdown in the report, is really about elementary grades, where we have the most teachers. Now, in terms of training, this is over time, right? So training is, as you said, over 2 years, but then they might have been trained 3 years ago, and they're not captured in that training. Our push to train teachers, anyone who is teaching health ed, is huge. We pull data on anyone who is teaching a health ed class, and we directly email that person and that person's supervisors, the principals, and say, hey, come to training. We have information in our systems on who has attended training and who has not. So we're able to provide direct, targeted outreach. Excuse me 1 second. Okay.
Because it says 14% attended. So for those that are not participating, how are we addressing that to ensure they can comprehensively provide the information to students?
I'm gonna have to turn to
Yeah. So I think one is, I mean, as Despina mentioned, we're constantly doing outreach to target those teachers who haven't attended a training in the past. And then in all of our communications, we include all of our standard resources. So even if a teacher hasn't attended our training, they have our scope and sequence, they have our guidance materials, they have our recommended curricula. We want them to come to trainings. We are constantly trying to recruit more teachers and get every single teacher in the city trained. And also that over communication of resources, I think is key, so that even if a teacher has attended training 4 years ago, they still have the most up-to-date information on what the curriculum looks like.
And how are you ensuring that there's some effectiveness with that information being shared with them, being that they're not coming to the initial training?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Okay.
You know, I think it's
something you guys need to discuss on December 9th and make sure.
Absolutely. I mean, that's part of what we're so excited about the new task force, right? Is how in such a vast system with such different needs do you know what's happening everywhere and how to give people what they need everywhere. So yes, completely agree.
Chair Joseph, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you. Is it fair to say on the record that we do have a shortage area in health education in middle school?
I would need to, I can't talk about shortage areas. That's not my department. Do we have the,
Do you have enough personnel to teach the courses that you need to meet the requirements?
I don't know that. I don't have that analysis, but I can take a look. We do have, because again, it's not about being licensed, because teachers can teach out of license. So do we have?
In middle school? On high school?
Under the incidental teaching. I know that in elementary school, it can be a classroom teacher or a certified teacher. The state requires a certified teacher at the secondary level. However, if a school can't afford a particular teacher for one content area or another, or there's a shortage, or there is the ability to sort of work with a principal, to work with their superintendent, to get a teacher to teach a maximum of 5 periods a week out of license. I have not done the analysis, and I have not, and not too many principals tell us that the reason they're not programming kids is for teachers. I can tell you anecdotally. It's really about programming space, time, competing priorities, et cetera, but I can't respond to that.
But earlier you said this was a priority. So if it is a priority, why we're not prioritizing it?
That's what we're working on. That's the video, that's, you know, what we shared with you. That's part of our job. We have to sort of, you know, there was such a focus on ELA and math, right, with standardized testing, et cetera, that, you know, we're moving away from that now. We're moving to sort of portfolio work, and we're moving to sort of broader literacy. But there was such an emphasis on testing, frankly, that we fell off. You know, the arts have the same issue. PE has the same issue. So part of, you know, communicating the importance of health education, because of the skills the students learn for the rest, that will support them the rest of their lives, right, is part of the job that we do every day. And part of why we're so thankful to be here with you today. And part of why we're so thankful that you're saying the same thing. And so schools are hearing it from multiple sources and reading it from multiple sources. So thank you.
They also have to hear it from you. So how many, you said you had how many, 135?
135 licensed teachers, but some may be certified but not licensed, or not teaching under that license.
Oh, let me recognize Councilmember Palladino Stevens. So New York State requires that health education is taught by a certified health education teacher. However, New York State's incidental teaching provision permits teachers to teach one out of license, what we were talking about. But if they have demonstrated competency in the subject matter as a result, teachers without a health license are frequently assigned to teach health under this provision. So how many teachers without health education certification are currently assigned to teach health courses in New York City public schools? Can you give me that data based on grade level?
So we have grade level, the number of teachers who are teaching by grade level?
Out of license, what we just talked about earlier.
So it's any teacher teaching. Now, we know we only have 135 licensed teachers, but the state talks about certified. So the language between the state and the city is different, right? The city talks about licensed, the state talks about certified, and we make that point in the public report that we release. Now, we have the number of teachers, the 14,000 whatever teacher's teaching at least one class and by grade level. And we know that 135 are licensed in New York City. That we don't have like where the licensed teachers are. We just have how many teachers are teaching one class by grade level.
You said you were a former principal, right?
Yes.
So I know principals like to capture data, right? That's how we inform our instructions. Why we're not capturing that data to better inform the decisions that we make on health educators?
So I think the beauty of being a principal was my community, right? It was my teachers, my families, my kids. I know what I was doing with our resources, and our SLT sort of, was able to have representation from every constituent of our community and make those decisions. It was here. What we're talking about now is the New York City Public School system capturing each one of those data points for each one of these communities, and there's 1,500 of them. So
1,800 to be correct. So I'm still a little perplexed. I'm gonna come back around with that same question because I'm just puzzled that we don't have any data to drive this policy. We've made recommendations. We have a local law, and some of that data was supposed to drive some of the conversations we're having today. But if we don't have that, then we can't drive that conversation. So what criteria or process does DOE use to evaluate a teacher's competency to teach health education under incidental teaching provisions?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Sure. What criteria or process does DOE use to evaluate teachers' competency to teach health education under the incidental teaching provision?
So that is a conversation between the principal and the superintendent as directed by the state. There are no DOE competencies. So it's a conversation between the principal and the superintendent. This is what I need. This is what I have. I'd like this person to teach under the incidental consideration.
Thank you. I will circle right back to you. Councilmember Dinowitz.
Thank you, chairs. Well, first, I just have to say I couldn't agree more with what you said about our high-stakes tests, driving everything and every decision principals, unfortunately, I think are forced to make. So many of their incentives are based on these very narrow tests, and unfortunately, important issues like health and sex education are left by the wayside. What assessment data? We've talked a lot about training, number of teachers with licenses on sort of the front and on the back end. Are you assessing every single child to ensure their competency in health and sex education?
There is no assessment that we can implement centrally to, it's a course. So is that what you were asking? If we can...
Assessments, right? Whether it's a portfolio, some sort of assessment to demonstrate what students have learned. That's the purpose of an assessment.
Yeah, that would be the course that is offered to the students and what that instruction, that teacher has put in place for that course.
Right, but the existence of a course doesn't mean it's a quality course. The existence of a curriculum doesn't mean it's being implemented well, and that's the purpose of assessments, to see in one purpose, to see what our students are learning. And so is there any assessment data available for the impact, related to the impact of these courses on our children?
We don't have an assessment itself to assess.
How do you assess the quality of the programs?
We can't assess the quality. What we can do is ensure that we are training teachers to provide quality health education. Just like, we can't externally assess the quality of any instruction that's happening at an individual school, except for where there are standardized tests to test the children. We don't know the quality of an arts program or anything else.
I mean, in your report here that you've shared with us, you share some quantitative analyses. So they exist. I mean, they're here. It says 54% more middle school students reported recent condom use, 6% fewer high school students report lifetime sexual activity for school wellness council funding. 3% more middle school students reported recent condom use when it's the health teacher consistent. So there is data, there's assessment data, and so that's what I'm asking about. So you have some here.
So,
Please.
yeah, so there's assessment data like the YRBS, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, right, that is administered to high school students.
To all high school students?
Sorry?
To all high school students?
No, it's a subset chosen of schools, chosen, I believe, by the CDC and the Department of Health. Every
But you
2
as the
years.
DOE have the power to, or the ability to assess individual schools to see the impact of their health
No.
education curriculum.
This is all anonymous.
Right.
And these are researchers, like we.
So is attendance data, and so is Regents data on school report cards, but the assessments are still done. What's in the law that's preventing you from assessing the schools on the impact of of the quality of their education?
Assessing the schools on the quality of, so that, I need to think about that in terms
Okay.
of, because we don't, departments don't assess the teachers, principals assess teachers, right? The instructional quality and outcomes.
All right, I'd love to follow up further on this because this is a very important topic, and we want to make sure that our kids are learning these things in school and that there's demonstrable results from this. 2 other questions. One is, are additional resources provided to areas, geographic areas where there's higher incidence of teen pregnancy and HIV transmission?
Yeah, we work with the Department of Health, which very closely, which has programs like New York City Teens Connection that focus on these areas where the data is showing us higher rates of teen pregnancy, for example. And so we work very closely with them to make sure that they can recruit schools, work with those schools, and really coach the teachers.
Okay, interested to learn exactly what those additional resources are and look like. And lastly, you had spoken in your testimony about health teachers. To what extent are these health skills required by the DOE, not because a school chooses to what extent are these health skills integrated into the curriculum and encouraged to be taught by academic teachers, and to what extent are they trained, and of course, to what extent are they measured on it, assessed on, are the students assessed on it in academic classes?
I mean, I can just hand it to you for a second, but I think I could not agree more with you about the importance of it being an academic subject, right? That is, I think, a big misperception that we're often trying to overcome is folks not realizing that it has standards. There are state standards, there are national standards, there is a New York City scope and sequence that includes what standards all health education classes are supposed to meet. So that is in place, and that includes unit assessments, right, that the teacher would administer.
What I mean specifically is, in a math class, kids are dealing with a ton of stress. I know,
right,
as I taught it. In a science class, you're dealing with the biology of the human body, and those are just 2 examples. You spoke about the history of the LGBTQ movement. In every academic subject, health can be incorporated. I'm asking to what extent the DOE is investing in that movement to do that.
So, good question. Thank you.
It's my last one too, Chair, don't worry.
So I think I want to take that question and really sort of think about it in terms of, what we are doing, because sometimes I think what we're thinking about is what happens at the local school level and how do we know about it, right? So, like, for example, you asked about assessment, and I know that the curriculum that we recommend also has unit assessments. So we test kids' mastery. The teacher tests the kids' mastery, and the teacher understands the kids' mastery. We don't know it. So that leap, right, that what stays at the school level and what do we capture, I think is a bigger question, and not just for health education, but for all.
And then my question about incorporating the health education into the typical academic subjects, to what extent is that being done?
So I would say we both agree that that's something that we see. Health education is about skills. And so those skills are transferable, right? It's not just about the content. So I think that we could do more to be more intentional about that with other sort of content areas. I know that you know, we need to develop some structures and some trainings. Probably sort of, you know, I'd love to think about how we could pilot, you know, a particular school or a particular district that would have this sort of joint training. But that's a really good idea. I always, you know, we have that in social studies and ELA. We have that in the arts and content areas. So I'd love to be able to think about what this could look like in health.
And I think two places where that already lives is social emotional learning, right? So many of the skills that are SEL skills are also health education skills. And so that's an area where I think we have seen a huge movement to get those skills into many different classes. And then another area is in the area of, if I think of a specific topic, food education, right? That's another place where we're looking at how can that be done interdisciplinarily. So I think there's room to expand on that. I think it's happening in some places.
Yeah, it just seems that there needs to be more consistency. You have a really important job. Until schools and districts are measured and assessed on the impact of this, and until it's truly incorporated into our academic curriculum and it's reported on our school quality review and school report cards, I don't think we're going to see much movement. Chairs, thank you so much for the time. Thank you for your testimony.
Chair Joseph, I have an update for you. The New York State requires 100 hours of professional development every 5 years for teachers to maintain their certification.
Thank you. Councilmember Narcisse.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. From my understanding, you have 135 licensed teachers, right? So in the 135, do you mind to tell me where they're located based on, I think we have about 1,800 schools, but you don't, not 1,800, you're gonna have the licensed teachers, but I would like to know where you have those licensed ones located.
I don't have that data, but I can take a look at it.
Do you have it by district?
I don't have it with me. We don't break out, we just report on the number of licensed teachers in the local law report. So
I'm very much interested to see where they are located. Thank you. Parents. Parents' engagement is always very important to me. I'm a parent, right? So what steps are being taken to involve parents, guardians, or anyone taking care of those children in shaping and understanding the curriculum? What are the steps are you taking?
So we can talk about a few things here. One would be the family materials as part of the different curricula. So Sarah, why don't you start with that? But we do have family engagement in multiple ways, but we can start with the curricula.
Yeah, one of our key messages to schools is that parents and families and guardians are essential partners in this work. Like, schools can't do this alone. Parents and guardians are first and foremost in this. And so we have materials that we provide to schools in 10 languages to inform parents about what is in the curriculum, what the content is, how they can opt out of certain lessons, the overview of what's covered. And we're hoping to develop more just sort of educational materials as well, because I think that's, we have some resources we can point families to, but I think it's important for them to have more concrete sort of resources themselves so that they can start to have those conversations with their children. In terms of the curriculum, we always involve parents in the review process. We have a very formal review process that we go through anytime we adopt or develop a new curriculum that includes a wide variety of stakeholders, including educators, content experts, and families. And so, that's something that is really important to us whenever we're developing or recommending a new curriculum.
Okay. You work with CCs to make sure that they get the information?
Yeah.
So they can populate the information among the populations they represent?
Yes. So as part of the updating of our citywide wellness policy, we invite all CEC members to join the Citywide Wellness Advisory Council, which meets approximately once a month. And we, as an office, engage them in sort of looking at the importance of health education, the importance of sexual health education, the importance of HIV education, physical activity, physical education, et cetera. That is one way. We also sort of encourage any schools that have a school wellness council or that we fund for a school wellness council to really focus on health education, which again includes sexual health education. So we are engaging families, but more so we're providing schools with the resources to engage their families.
Thank you for that, because you know how important it is as a parents when the children get some information over here and you're not kind of aware of it, and they create some confusion when they receive the information and how they process it, and who knows the children best, the parents, right? Are there clear channels for parents to review and provide feedback on the materials being used in the classrooms?
So my understanding is that, again, this from my past experience, there are curricular nights at each school. They're encouraged. It happens early in September, and each teacher shares what curricular materials are going to be used. So that's sort of happening at the local school level. I think, I don't know if resources are available for families.
Yeah, I mean, and at the central level, as I mentioned, whenever we do like a district-wide curriculum review, we involve parents in that work to make sure that they're part of the review process.
But in terms of curricula being used in their children's classroom,
right?
That would happen at the local school level. That's curriculum night, early in September, and teachers share with families what resources they're going to be using.
I love the idea that principals and schools kind of independent and doing their own things. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure, since it's a curriculum, is throughout New York City, and all our children are receiving the same materials in some way. But reinforcement and different things can be done on the kind of particular each schools, right? But we want our children to be on the same page at the end of the day. I want to finish because my time is up. Lastly, languages. We talk about 10 languages. What are the top 10 languages that we talk about?
I would need to look that up, but I know that it's, of course, Spanish. Can we look that up? Yeah, we're looking that up. In the meantime, let me respond about the 135 certified teachers. We have 25 in the Bronx, 30 in Brooklyn, 16 in Manhattan, 60 in Queens, and 4 on Staten Island.
Thank you for that. And since my time is up, you can continue, Chair, and when you come up with the answer for me, then I'll be more than happy to hear it. Thank you, Chairs, both of you. Thanks.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Councilmember Schulman, Councilmember Gennaro, and Councilmember Vernikoff. So how does New York City Public Schools monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of sexual health education program in schools? I know that was asked earlier, but I want to tie it in with what metrics are also used to evaluate effectiveness in reducing rates such as teen pregnancy, sexually transmitted disease, intimate partner violence, and other key health indicators. Are you in contact with the OHMH to track this data?
So we work very closely with the OHMH. Sarah can talk to the specifics.
Yeah, we partner with them extremely closely to implement the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which is, as well as with the CDC, which is the main way that we capture health information about what young people in New York City are doing and experiencing. And then we also administer the School Profiles Survey, which looks at what schools are reporting doing. So there's the student level anonymous survey of health risks, and then there's a school level survey of principal and teachers reporting on what they are doing in their schools. And so we work really collaboratively with both CDC and the Department of Health to look at the trends from both of those surveillance methods.
Are we seeing any disparities in access to quality sexual health education across schools, particularly in underserved neighborhoods or among vulnerable populations? What is the data telling us there?
Oh, just that. So as we've talked about, we don't capture which schools are teaching sexual health education. So we don't.
So we don't get to see who the underserved. So everyone has equal access. Is that what you're telling me?
I'm saying we don't track which schools provide sexual health education as a part of health education.
We only track health education.
Health education, right?
Many individual schools reported 0 students received the required number of lessons in HIV and AIDS for 2023 and 2024. And what is the main factor contributing to the 0% outcome?
0% of students having a health education.
HIV.
I'm sorry,
HIV education for 2024 and 2023 and 2024 school years. We're seeing a 0%.
Yep. I can talk about some of the barriers in terms from an administrative point of view, and then Sarah can talk a little bit about the instructional point of view. Administrative, I think every student needs their HIV lessons every year. Sometimes it's easy for students who are programmed for health education to receive their HIV lessons in health education. For the students who are not, that administration or a teacher or an AP, somebody needs to think about where are the students getting the number of lessons that they need, who is teaching them, and when are they getting them. And frankly, some folks don't know how to do it. Some folks know how to do it well, some administrators. And part of what we're doing is understanding the schools that are doing it, that are providing the lessons to 100% of their students in smart ways, meaning the way they choose who's providing the instruction, when the students are getting the lessons, how is this message to the school community, including families. We're trying to sort of capture best practices to share with schools that are not providing students with their HIV lessons, because I think in many cases it's just not grasping what needs to be done. Because it's about teachers, it's about programming, it's about timing, and what are they not going to have during their school day in order to have the HIV lesson. So that's one piece of it. But I think the other piece is just the teachers themselves.
Yeah, I think the other piece is because it is required every single year, and there are not enough, licensed and certified teachers to cover that class, those 5 or 6 lessons every single year, including the years when they don't have a health education class. Many teachers might feel uncomfortable, unprepared, or what we often hear is fearing backlash from the community, from parents, et cetera. And so this is one of the things that we really try to address in our trainings, both the self-guided and the live, is what resources are available, what the policies are, and how folks can handle those, uncomfortable questions that are going to naturally come up, so that they don't have to be so nervous about it. I think there's also a sort of public misconception that HIV and AIDS are no longer relevant for young people, which further can sometimes limit the buy-in from administrators and teachers who already have so many competing priorities. But we know that it is just as important as ever, given that young people do have the most sexual health risk, right, as compared to other age groups. And so I think that a lot of it is about training and messaging and getting folks to understand that this is still a relevant topic, and that the education that they're getting now doesn't look like what they got in the past. The new curriculum isn't just about the science of HIV. It's much more about the skills that students need to keep themselves healthy and safe for a lifetime. And so I think we're really proud of the fact that we jumped 20% points in compliance last year, and I think a lot of that was due to having a new, updated, engaging curriculum that folks can see as relevant to their students.
So what accountability measures are in place when districts are reporting compliances below 50%? There has to be some accountability and responsibility, right?
So
what is that?
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
We are a support office, right? We work with schools, we work with districts, we work with teachers, we work with central offices to make sure that we have that every New York City public school student is getting quality health education, quality sexual health education, and the required number of HIV lessons in a way that makes sense, with quality instructional materials and from someone that is comfortable teaching them. That's what we support. And that's what we need to focus on, because we're not a supervisory office. We don't, what we try to do is make sure that schools are doing it and engage with everyone who works with schools, right? Superintendents, their teams, central offices, principals, assistant principals, teachers, anyone who will listen to us. So I can't speak to the accountability measure of it.
Well, there's a local law that requires reporting from individual schools in order to comply. So how we can't hold accountability when there's a law in place to make sure the reporting is done?
Correct. And again, as a support office, what I do is take the information from the local law and point schools to what it's saying about their school community, you know, what they need to do for their children, what superintendents need to do for their district, their district schools.
And you said you were taking some of the best practices for schools that are doing it at the minimum to spread. How successful have you been at that?
So this is something that we just started because we had a very successful phone call with a principal of an elementary school that had a great system for ensuring that all her kids got the required number of lessons, and she laid it out for us. And so we thought immediately right on that call, this is what we should be doing. We should be capturing best practices, right? Because she spoke about teacher quality, she spoke about the materials, she spoke about how she programs the kids, how she engages her school community before providing the lessons, that, hey, this is what we're doing. These are the lessons, this is what we're teaching. So we felt that if we capture her information and tap into others to provide almost like a menu to schools and say, look, these are ways that you can implement the HIV lessons. We're at the beginning stages of that because this conversation happened in June with the one principal. So this is something that we're intending on doing, this menu of implementation.
The HIV lesson is, it's given to teachers in elementary. We're going to go to elementary in September, correct? When is the deadline to submit it? That it was taught.
So sometime in May. I'm not sure about this year's deadline, but it's usually sometime in May. And what we do is we get data, right, from another office that sort of owns STARS. We get data and we message sort of mid-year to all schools and all districts that, hey, by the way, this is the % of your students that have gotten the required number of lessons. Don't forget, you know, this is the requirement, this is the deadline, these are the lessons, the curriculum, these are the training dates, and these are good ways of implementing, like who should be doing it and when. So that package sort of goes to principals, usually around March, and then we also provide the same information to superintendents and their teams and say, this is how your schools are doing.
I'm going to go to Councilmember Hanif.
Thank you, Chair Joseph, and good afternoon. I'd like to dive right in. How many New York City public schools school students are receiving sex ed in middle school, and how many public school students are receiving sex ed in high school? And I'm not sure if this was already covered.
So we don't capture the number of students receiving sexual health education because it's part of health education. So if we say that 99.7% of students are meeting requirements at the high school level, that means that we're assuming they were taught the health education curriculum, which includes sexual health education lessons.
So what's the total for students receiving then the health curriculum?
For high school, it's 99.7%, right? Because it is a graduation requirement. And then for middle school, it is 58%.
And the remaining students either opted out, or what are the reasons for this not being at 100%?
It could be students that have left the system but are not discharged yet. It's a very minute number, right, for the 99.7. But it does not mean that any student graduated without the credit. It means that something, whether the student is a super senior, whether the student, left but isn't discharged yet, something like that.
And so it's right to to say that students who participate in the health curriculum took a course or participated in classes related to sex ed?
The sexual health curriculum is sexual health are lessons in health education.
In health education, okay.
Yep.
That's clear. And then the city requires that sex education be a part of one semester of health education, which you mentioned. To your knowledge, are any public schools teaching more sex ed than that minimum requirement? For example, by teaching a standalone sex education class or by including sex ed in health classes that occur more than once in middle school and once in high school? And if so, how many schools are exceeding that requirement?
I don't have that information. I don't have that data.
But do you think that that's something that's happening?
I'm not sure.
I think in some cases, I don't think it's super widespread, but I think that's something we could look at how many schools are going above and beyond the expectations.
Yeah, I'd be curious to understand, and I'm curious like how you're assessing like, you know, the efficacy of this curriculum in terms of like any kind of parameters being met around, has school bullying dropped? Have there been less conflict among students in relationships, or et cetera?
Yeah, and that's the report that you all have that we handed out. So that was the result of a research project that we did, which is not something that we are able to do regularly because it does require a lot of resources. This was from a grant that we received from the New York Community Trust, where we were actually able to do a research project with an external evaluator on the connection between the health education practices that schools were doing and the health outcomes of students. So we did see some data points around bullying, around other, I can take a look, but there were certain practices that we saw, like teachers attending training, like teachers teaching health year after year, that we saw did in fact correlate with certain health outcomes. We can't prove causality, again, and this isn't an evaluation that we do regularly because it does require significant resources, but that was one attempt to at least look at what data we have.
And how long did that research take?
It was from 2021 to 2023.
And is that the only report, or is that, will there be a second part to this, or how frequently are we?
This was a standalone grant. This was a one-time thing. It is available online, so you all have the handouts, but it's also we can share the link to it online. So
outside of this, there isn't sort of this kind of
No, that was a grant
dive.
that we used for
Yep.
I mean, I think it's helpful to be able to.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely.
I agree.
Good on the New York Community Trust for
yes, we
their
appreciate
grant.
that.
What training and resources, if any, are provided to teachers so that they can effectively teach the curriculum?
Training is huge for our office. That is, we have multiple trainings. Sarah can talk specifically around her team, the health education team that provides the trainings. So why don't you?
Yeah, training is one of the things that we are really proud of. We have, hundreds of educators, thousands in fact, that come to our trainings every year. So we have a series, talked a little bit about this earlier, but we have a series on introductory health education topics, which includes LGBTQ inclusion. We have a series on sexual health topics, and we have a series on the HIV curriculum, and we're currently working on a series on mental health as well. And that includes both live training opportunities and self-guided for teachers to take on their own time.
Chairs, I just have a few more follow-ups. I'll be quick. Are there any gaps that have been identified in the current curriculum? And if so, what are you all doing to amend or fix?
The HIV or the sexual?
The sexual.
Sexual gaps in the curriculum?
That's a great question. I think that one thing was what Chair Lewis brought up earlier around human trafficking. So we have, that's one thing that comes to mind where it's in our scope and sequence. That is an expectation that schools do address in the high school curriculum, but we could use more lesson materials around it. And so I think that's one area that I think we would love more lesson materials. We've recently been working at the elementary level to get more resources on consent and healthy relationships. So that was a gap gap area that we've been really working to fill with the help of various partner organizations like Hip Hop Public Health and others. And so those are two that just come to the top of my mind right now. I would say, throughout the whole health curriculum, there's other gaps, not just in sexual health, that we're working on, like lessons on fentanyl, other sort of emerging issues that are sort of new enough that there aren't established curricula about. So yeah, I would say throughout the whole health curriculum, there's definitely some gaps that we're sort of always working on a review process to find new materials.
And then outside of content, are these materials translated in other languages, or how are students who are limited English proficient included?
Yeah, it definitely depends on the materials, I would say. So the ones that we develop are translated into multiple languages. Some of the curricula, our recommended curricula, like Health Smart, is available in Spanish. And then other materials, that we may get from partner organizations, it will depend on whether they or we have, are able to translate those things. All of our curriculum also include tips for teachers on working with especially a class of multiple language learners, right? And so if you're not just providing instruction in one or two languages, but many, what are some tips on how to do that? So we try to include those tips throughout the curriculum and then translate as many student-facing resources as we can.
And then when was the current sex ed curriculum most recently updated?
So the HIV curriculum, Growing Up and Staying Safe, which encompasses, as I said, more than just what we might think of traditionally as the science of HIV, but really holistic sense of wellness around student health. That was just launched this past year. We just updated that and rolled it out last fall in 2023. The other recommended sexual health curricula, I would have to look up the exact year that they were last updated. But I can get that for you. 0%.
I don't know what that means.
Thank you.
I actually have the languages, the DOE languages.
Thank you.
Of course. It's Spanish, French, Haitian Creole, Chinese, Arabic, Bangladeshi, Urdu, Korean, Russian, and English.
Korean,
Russian, and English.
And we also have one follow-up about the data point on the 0% of students. So just want to clarify that that's not necessarily students getting no lessons. That's the schools that are not giving all the lessons to all the students. So just wanted to clarify that.
Can you repeat it for me, the languages, because I'm missing one?
Oh,
okay.
Yep.
Spanish, French.
Spanish, French, Haitian Creole, Chinese, Arabic, Bangladeshi, Urdu, Korean, Russian, and English.
I got that. Thank you so much, and I appreciate you. Thank you both.
Earlier, you said you meet the needs of students with who are multilingual learners. How about students with special needs? How are they supported?
All of our materials are meant to be inclusive of all students, right? So I think that Sarah can talk about the curriculum planning and how specific scaffolds are built in for all students, Ls, students with disabilities, et cetera. So,
yeah, we really, are constantly sort of messaging the fact that all students deserve this, right? All students deserve this sexual health education, including our most vulnerable students, which includes students with disabilities. And so it's required for all schools. There's not, a separate mandate for different schools or different students. And then in terms of the curriculum, yes, there's scaffolding built in to lessons because, again, the scope and sequence is appropriate for all students, right? It is age appropriate. What differs then is the strategies that teachers use to differentiate their instruction so that it is developmentally appropriate. And so our instructional materials include, scaffolding tips, ideas, strategies, as well as our trainings. We actually have a specific training on teaching sex ed for students with disabilities because we know that's an area of need for many teachers.
Thank you. I know one of my colleagues asked this, but I just want to come back on this for a little bit. How are parents, educators, and students engaged in development and implementation of the sexual health curricula? And do students have an opportunity to provide feedback?
Yeah, so in specific curriculum reviews, in our formal review process, like when we developed the new HIV curriculum, Growing Up and Staying Safe, we included both parents and students in that process. So students were actually included at multiple points at the very beginning before we'd even started writing to make sure that we knew what they needed and what they wanted, what direction they wanted us to go. In the middle, during the piloting process, we also collected feedback from students who had actually received the lessons to see what they thought of them, if they liked them, et cetera. So that's always built into our formal review process. And then we also have these two standing committees, one made up of CEC members and one made up of high school students to give us sort of ongoing input.
Oh, so they are the young people are at the table.
Yes, we have a specific committee for young people.
What specific barriers have contributed to only 58% of 8th graders receiving the required 54 hours of health instruction during the 2023 and 2024 school year?
I think some I outlined in the testimony. We only started checking for 54 hours in 2017, and we started that because we noticed that, before 2017, we were looking at courses. Do students have health education on their transcript? And the answer was yes. And we looked at, they counted as like check off the box. They got it. But when our health ed team was in schools and looking at how students were programmed, they were seeing that they were not programmed to meet a lot. If they were programmed for one semester, they met the 54-hour requirement. For schools that dragged out the classes, like one period a week for a year, that would not meet the requirement. So that's why we started checking for the 54 hours. Communicating that out to schools took a while to make sure that they understood they had to, program for 54 hours, and that was the measure that we would be holding them to. That's the state requirement. We started in 2017, and then we hit, remote learning and hybrid learning and relaxed sort of time requirements. Although students had to meet all the requirements of the content, there were relaxed time requirements to allow for hybrid models and remote models. So then when we came back, we had to re-communicate everything. So we are going up, but we have work to do. But that was a little sort of slip right there from the time we started with the 54 hours to 2022. So, we had to re-up our communication.
During remote learning, was any of the health education classes taught on remote learning?
Yes, we provided lots of resources, guidance, et cetera, for remote learning because the requirement was still in place. What was relaxed was the time requirement.
That's
so
right.
that was what the 54 hours was waived for that time period, but they were still required to teach health. And so we pivoted as fast as we could to make videos, to make remote lesson plans, and give guidance to teachers so that they could teach even some of the more challenging topics remotely.
Are we using any of the SAPIS counselors for the substance abuse part?
Yeah, we work very closely with SAPIS. Not all schools have a SAPIS counselor, but in those that do, we definitely encourage them to partner with the health education teacher for the substance abuse portion.
And then if the school doesn't have a SAPIS counselor, it's
Yep.
the health
It's the health
education
teacher,
teacher
yep.
that provides that?
Yes.
We also notice a high rate of suicide prevention. Is that part of the health education?
Yes, absolutely. Mental health is a really important unit at all grade levels, and in age-appropriate ways, suicide prevention is included in that.
And the use of 988, students are aware that this is a resource that they have, and
Yeah, so access, I've sort of talked about some of the skills in health education, like advocacy. Another key skill is called accessing valid and reliable resources. So in all the different units, part of the focus is where do you go for help, right? So for mental health, where do you go for help? For sexual health, where do you go for help? For substance abuse disorders, where do you go for help? So that's a really important piece of the curriculum.
do you also use some of the health clinics that are already based in the schools to provide support?
Yes, definitely. We
Tell me
really,
about that.
Yeah, we really try to promote school-based services wherever possible. So in schools that have a school-based health center or a catch program in the high schools to provide health services, it's so important. We want schools to take their students to or teachers in the health class. Part of the lesson in the sexual health curriculum, at least in high school, is a clinic visit. And so in a school, that's really easy for them to do, right? They can just go downstairs or whatever it is and visit the clinic so that students become more familiar with it, more comfortable with it. If they don't have a clinic in their school, then we provide them with the Department of Health has a NYC health map where you can filter by teen services, as well as the city's sexual health clinics. And so teachers can do activities with their students around how to find the clinic that's going to work best for you.
The CAP program.
Oh, yes, and we also manage the CAP program, which is the Condom Availability Program. So all high schools are required to have at least 2 staff members trained to make condoms available for their students.
What step does New York City Public Schools plan to take to address gaps in compliance, increase the percentage of students receiving the required instruction by grade 8?
So we, as I shared, our plan is to communicate, advocate, make sure that all are informed of the requirements, all are informed of the resources, all are informed of the curricula, the trainings, and our office provides technical support, meaning that if a principal says, I can't do this, like I don't know how to program these kids, we are available to support that school, but at the same time, we have Office of Performance and Accountability leads on the superintendent's teams that are specialists, like they on programming students, on using STARS, entering correct information in STARS. So we partner with superintendent districts to provide support to schools and to superintendent teams in understanding what their schools need to do. So we're really working with the field in making sure that schools understand what they need to do. They do what they're supposed to do, and if they don't do, we try to understand why. And we try to provide the technical assistance in partnership with the superintendent's team, the district team, to really sort of move practice forward. I think we've come a long way from not long enough, but we've come a long way in terms of our data, as I shared in the testimony. Let me just take a look. I'm sorry. So we're 58% last year, but we were at, we came up 20.8 percentage points from 2017-18. So again, with all the COVID interruptions, et cetera, but we have a lot of work to do. But I think we are, what we are doing now is the same way I described HIV data, we are getting health education data from middle schools, and the same communication will happen, hopefully this month, meaning that every school will get, this is the percentage of your 8th graders that have met health ed requirements. These are the requirements, this is what you need to do, these are the resources, these are the trainings that will go to every principal with grades 6 through 8. And it will also go to every superintendent and team that have schools with grades 6 through 8. So that same information in terms of this is what you need to do for your 8th graders for spring 2025, and supporting those schools in being able to do it. The general communications and the needs go out every September in P Digest. Like, this is what you need to do for physical education, health education, HIV lessons, CAP, et cetera. So we always point back to that when communicating with schools. We have a support system in the district teams, and we've established good communication with principals and them being able to let us know what the barriers are for each particular school and us trying to solve for them.
But there was a law that was passed in 2017, so we're going back to that law again because it's a law, right? A law asks you to do something or else there'll be consequences, and here we are. in 2024, and a lot of these, we have not met the threshold. And it's alarming for us, and that's why we're sitting here having this hearing. So I just want to know, what are the timelines and what is the next steps moving forward in having that goal? Because I'm sure Councilmember Lewis will agree, we're going to come back to find out the numbers and seeing where we have improvement, because it's part of the curricula to make sure these students are getting their health education. For me, there's never any excuses when we don't follow the law, right? So if I break the law, there are consequences. I just don't understand why there isn't any accountability and responsibility in providing the information and the data to drive policy. Like you, I was an educator. Like you were a principal, and we know data is what drive our schools, right? They said, don't be ashamed of your data. I'm happy you're not ashamed to share your data, which is a good thing. From that data, how do we build to get where we need to go?
Make it we need, it's the actionable data.
And we will visit to make sure the data is where it needs to be, because we feel that this is so important, very, very important to both of us, and that's why we're here today, especially around young people being trafficking. I definitely support the council members, Chair Lewis's reso. It's an ongoing crisis. So I think that's it for me. Thank you. Councilmember Lewis, Chair Lewis, anything?
Thank you, Chair Joseph, for the partnership. I echo all of the sentiments of Chair Joseph, and we look forward to continuing to working with you guys. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Are we leaving?
Okay. I now open the hearing for public testimony. I remind members of the public that this is a government proceeding and decorum shall be observed at all times. As such, members of the public shall remain silent at all times. Witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. No video recording or photography is allowed from the witness table. Further, members of the public may not present audio or video recording as testimony, but may submit transcripts of such recording to the Sergeant of Arms for inclusion in the hearing record. If you wish to speak at today's hearing, please fill out an appearance card with the Sergeant at Arms and wait to be recognized. When recognized, you will have 3 minutes to speak on today's oversight topic, providing comprehensive sex education as part of health education on Intro 1057 and on Resolution 94A, Resolution 251, and Reso 373. If you have a written statement or additional written testimony you may wish to submit for the record, please provide a copy of that testimony to the Sergeant of Arms. You may also email written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov within 72 hours of this hearing. Audio and video recordings will not be accepted. The first panel, Quadira Coles. Yilin Zhu, if I mispronounce your name, please forgive me. Amelia Sanchez. Kimberly Blair. Jasmina Salimova.
You may begin your testimony when you're ready. You can go, whoever can go first. Good afternoon, Chair Joseph and Chair Lewis and members of the committee and staff. My name is Kimberly Blair. I'm Senior Director of Public Policy and Advocacy at Girls for Gender Equity, or GGE. We work intergenerationally through a Black feminist lens to center the leadership of Black girls and gender-expansive youth of color in reshaping culture and policy. We do this through advocacy, youth-centered programming, as well as narrative shift to achieve gender and racial justice. We are here today to offer our testimony in support of Resolution 94 of 2024, calling upon the New York State Legislature to pass and the governor to sign Assembly Bill 4604, a comprehensive sex ed bill, which would mandate comprehensive sex ed for all students grades K through 12. For too long, New York State has failed to provide its students with equitable, evidence-based sexuality education, leaving many vulnerable to preventable health risks and perpetuating cycles of misinformation and harm. This legislation is an essential step towards ensuring all students receive the education they need to make informed decisions about their health, relationships, and futures. GGE has been a leading advocate in this work for many years, co-steering the statewide coalition to advance comprehensive sex ed in the legislature. Comprehensive sex ed beginning at an early age can significantly reduce the rates of STIs, unplanned pregnancies, and dating violence. It also equips young people with the tools to build healthy relationships, respect boundaries, and recognize abusive behavior. Consequently, the absence of medically accurate and accessible information continues to contribute to the increasing amount of STIs, IPV, or intimate partner violence, as well as sexual violence and other health disparities. In the past decade, we've seen the percentage of sexually active high school students using contraception dropping 8%, from 60% in 2013 to 52% recently in 2023. Simultaneously, the percentage of students testing for STIs and using contraceptions trends downward. It has generally dropped, and these are concerning trends that highlight that comprehensive sex ed in schools is necessary to support students making informed decisions and introducing them to a variety of safe sex practices. Students in under-resourced schools are disproportionately impacted by the lack of comprehensive sex ed. Despite New York City's requirement for sex ed in grades 6 through 12, implementation remains inconsistent. Only 37.2% of 8th graders completing the 54-hour course in 2017 to 2018 school year. We have a state law, as you know, that would create accountability and provide clear expectations for educators and school districts statewide, and this resolution seeks to push the state in that direction of action. I will submit the rest as written. Thank you so much, and you're going to hear from Yi-Lin next.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Joseph, Chair Lewis, and the members and the staff of committees on education and women and gender equity. My name is Yulin Zhao, and I'm a Young Women's Advisory Council participant at Girls for Gender Equity. GGE is an intergenerational organization based in Brooklyn, New York, committed to the all-around development of Black girls and gender-expansive youth of color. GGE has been a leader in the conversation around gender-based violence and ending school push-out for close to 2 decades. I would like to share my story in hopes that you will support Resolution 0094 of 2024. I always knew what sex was beginning at a really young age. I was taught what sex was through word of mouth from my middle school acquaintances, but I was never taught what it really was from who it mattered the most and who I could trust the most, which was a teacher. I never understood how much it could devastate people's lives, and I was uneducated and too young to understand what I was doing. I'm a part of 42% of females ages 15 to 19 who have engaged in sexual behavior. However, I was never taught that having sex at a young age could completely change the future that I wanted for myself. In fact, my experience with sexual education was not educating at all. The teacher that taught me only taught me what our sexual reproductive body parts were, and that was that. My living environment class in 8th grade has taught me more than my health class has, and I hope that explains and speaks for itself more than it does. Instead of becoming a psychiatrist and going to college and making a difference, my lack of education could have led to teenage pregnancy, and I would have been at risk of STDs. But my story does not speak for every young female that has had intercourse. I was lucky that during intercourse, I used the little knowledge I was taught, and I used contraceptives. It was all I knew about sex. And I was able to understand the basics of I was able to understand the basics practice of safe sex. However, I was educated more than I was. If I was more educated, I would not have had sex at a young age, and I would have prevented the risk entirely. It is a fact that every single uneducated youth is not to blame, but instead it is the teachers, the education system, and society to blame for not educating the youth and realizing the impact they have on students and the choices in their lives. I was lucky enough to take health in middle school and learn about protection, and I was lucky enough to be educated and not have the future I have set for myself altered for the worse. Although we cannot prevent the young from having sex, what we can do is educate them to prevent what could have possibly changed their lives entirely. I want everybody to have a better experience than I did. The future of our youth is in your hands, and I urge you to support Resolution 0094 of 2024, not just for me, but for the upcoming youth who deserve to tell a better story than I do. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Joseph, Chair Lewis, and the members and staff of the Committees on Education and Women and Gender Equity. My name is Jasmina Salmova, and I'm an alumni of the YBAC program at Girls for Gender Equity and a recent high school graduate. I'm testifying today in support of Resolution 94 of 2024 to ensure comprehensive sexual education is in place to shift away from the current abstinence-based approach to prioritize young people's safety and bodily autonomy. The first time I received sexual education in school was from my 5th grade classmate who taught me how children were made using improper terms to refer to genitals. The first time I received formal instruction was in my 6th grade health class with a brief overview of reproductive anatomy, intercourse for conception, and STDs. I was required to retake health in high school during remote learning and have no memory of receiving sexual education in that class. This wasn't enough. Towards the start of my senior year, I began experiencing distressing physical symptoms, prolonged periods, unexplained weight gain, and severe cystic acne. After 8 painful months, I was finally diagnosed with PCOS by a gynecologist. This was the first time I've heard of PCOS, a hormonal disorder that impacts individuals with female reproductive systems. It was also the first time I learned that people assigned female at birth produce testosterone. It took struggling with the chronic disease for me to finally learn about hormones. I feel frustrated over the fact that I could have been aware from the signs from the beginning if I'd received comprehensive sexual education. Hormones and hormonal conjunctions are taught in conjunction. Hormones and hormonal conditions are taught in conjunction with STDs in a comprehensive curriculum, compared to our current one that only fearmongers with STDs to promote this non-universal standard of abstinence. Education should protect children and empower them to understand their bodies, not put them at risk. Comprehensive sexual education isn't encouraging intercourse. It addresses a broader systemic issue, the societal conditioning of young kids to undervalue consent and respect, which continues to fuel misogyny, racism, homophobia, and sexual violence. Abstinence-based approaches have failed and will continue to fail to confront the deeper-rooted issue of entitlement subconsciously felt by majority groups. This new curriculum will teach consent, respect, equity, inclusivity, safety, and bodily autonomy to promote the physical and mental health of students. Because of these experiences, I've been forced to take responsibility for my own sexual education to manage my health and safety. To address this, I asked that Resolution 94 be passed immediately to support the state comprehensive sexual education bill. I also asked that the curriculum be mandatory for grades K through 5. I understand that parents can opt out of their children receiving sexual education, but the early lessons in consent and respect go beyond sexual activity. They teach children how to treat and value others. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Chair Joseph, Chair Lewis, and the members of the Committee on Education and the Committee on Women and Gender Equity. My name is Amalia Sanchez, and I am an undergrad student, a self-defense teacher, and a youth fellow with Girls for Gender Equity. GGE is a nonprofit that works through a Black feminist lens, centering the leadership of Black girls and gender-expansive young people in reshaping culture and policy. Today, I'm here to express my support for Resolution 94, 2024, calling upon the New York State Legislative to pass A 4604, which requires comprehensive sexuality instruction for students grades K through 12. My sexual education in high school was limited to a one-day class where the only things taught were how to put a condom on a banana and watching a video that used tea as a metaphor for consent. Birth control was only briefly mentioned, and emergency contraceptive pills were taught as something to take if you've had unprotected sex in this time frame of 24 hours. This is misleading and lacks any real medical information or guidance on where young people can find these resources. There is an argument that learning about sex ed will encourage sexual activity. In reality, not being provided proper information about contraceptives, STIs, and STDs means more unsafe sexual activity. Another essential part of comprehensive sex ed is teaching young people about consent as soon as possible. Knowing how to give and take away consent is vital for young people, whether they are sexually active or not. All through my middle and high school years, girls would share with the school about situations in which boys would make unwanted advances, not listening to the word no. Instead of any action being taken to help victims feel safe, the school would cite ignorance as the reason for bad behavior, while allowing for this ignorance to continue by not providing more education. New York public schools testified that only 37.2% of 8th graders received the complete 54-hour sex education course during the 2017-2018 school year, meaning that the remaining percentage is learning a majority of their sex education from outside sources, including mainstream media and explicit content, which normalizes violent sexual experiences. To the members of the Joint Committees, I implore you to vote in support of Resolution 94 so that young people across New York are informed about how to have healthy, safe relationships and sexual experiences. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Good afternoon. My name is Cordera Coles. I'm the Director of Policy at Girls for Gender Equity. I'm going to read a testimony on behalf of a youth fellow who cannot be here today. Good evening. My name is Nayla Petitfrier. Thank you all for having me to testify today. I'm the Policy and Advocacy Fellow at Girls for Gender Equity. As a Black girl growing up in schools that did not offer any access to comprehensive sexuality education, I strongly support Resolution 0094 and due to the impact of the absence of this education. Sexual education is imperative to our schools and should not be neglected due to the failure of our institutions to provide comprehension, guidance, and support for our students. If passed and enacted, the state bill that this resolution supports will not enforce a system that pushes students to be sexually active, but rather it will provide an opportunity to prevent students from making mistakes by providing them with age-appropriate education and teaching the importance of consent and their bodily rights. Not addressing such topics in schools allows students to normalize the violation of boundaries while also preparing students to know how to voice their feelings in regards to consent. Supporting the sex ed bill will create an educational system that shapes students' overall environments through how they interact with one another at school and in their households. Comprehensive sex education will empower young people to make informed decisions and introduce healthy relationship dynamics, which is crucial for fostering a culture of mutual respect and understanding. Additionally, research shows that comprehensive sex education can lead to lower rates of sexual transmitted infections and unintended pregnancies among teenagers by promoting safe practices. Signing on to this bill is not simply doing us a favor, it is to create a better world to protect our young people and to do everything within our power to ensure they are safe, to provide them with every single resource that is necessary. Thank you. And I also want to note, you guys probably already know that this year we're going to get new introductions to the bill, so the state bill number for the sex ed bill will change, so that should be reflected in the new language if this bill passes. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I appreciate it. Thank you.
The next panel will be youth journalism people, so that's like your bill.
Okay. Next panel, CJ Sanchez. Caitlin Seafoam, I'm not seeing the last, please forgive me. Liza Greenberg. And Natalie Feiderman.
We have two more that were also signed up. Do you have Isabella Mason and Sarahi Dream?
Yes, they can come up. What's the first one?
Okay. You're all here? Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is CJ Sanchez. Thank you for convening this hearing. I'm a former public school teacher, and now I have the honor of leading the New York City Youth Journalism Coalition, which is a citywide collective of students, educators, newsrooms, DOE schools, higher education institutions, and nonprofits, all united to expand journalism opportunities for New York City youth. I'm eager to pass the mic to the students beside me, who are missing school to take part in this important civic process. Before I do, I just want to provide some context on the momentum happening beyond these walls and how Introduction 1057 would bolster it. We have right now just a snapshot of the dire state of student journalism in New York City. According to a 2022 survey, only 27% of public high schools have a student paper. Even more alarming is how this access is sharply divided along socioeconomic lines. In the 50 schools with the lowest poverty rates, 72% have a paper. Meanwhile, in the 50 schools with the highest poverty rates, only 6% do. We've been crafting solutions to address this disparity, sparked by a roundtable 2 years ago where students and DOE leadership envisioned the future of journalism in our schools. Now, with the backing of our Day One champions, Chair Rita Joseph and the Black, Latino, and Asian Caucus, the coalition is launching Journalism for All, a public-private partnership to create and sustain journalism programs in 30 New York City public high schools next fall. Introduction 1057 will allow us to not only measure the ongoing inequity, but also our progress towards addressing it. We've raised $1.2 million in private funding towards this initiative, and we received applications from 55 schools spanning 30 city council districts. Another 60 schools expressed interest but couldn't commit due to outstanding capacity challenges. Student journalism is clearly in high demand and in need of large-scale support. Today's inequity goes beyond numbers. When access to journalism is limited to certain students, so is the ability to tell their stories and shape their communities. Together, we can ensure that every student has the tools to shape the future of our city, starting with these 5 here today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Sarahi Drame, and I'm a 16-year-old junior at the Young Women's Leadership Academy of the Bronx, represented by Councilmember Sanchez. Thank you for this opportunity to speak today. I feel fortunate to go to a school that offers journalism as an elective. Even though I've only been in the class for 2 months, I can already tell the significance it's had and will continue to have on me. During these 2 months, we've dived deep into media bias, our own bias, and how those two often intersect. Through what I've learned, I've been able to sharpen my critical thinking skills and examine whether the information presented to me is fact or opinion. We also have current events presentations every Monday. These presentations range from important documentaries or the latest news that has been happening in our neighborhoods. Last week, I presented one on AI in hiring, and how bias can play a role. These presentations are more than presentations. They expose us to issues that matter to us all. They spark conversation and generate ideas. These presentations inspire change and represent the power and impact of journalism. As we analyze and discuss these articles in class, we find ourselves more connected than we think through our shared concerns, perspectives, and ideas. My experience in my journalism class have not only expanded my knowledge on the media, but have also led me to learn more about the issues that I care about and engage in conversations that will leave me with more ideas and interests to pursue. I want us to remember that informed voices can drive change, and if children are the future, then we must invest in our future. Journalism programs are one of the many ways New York City can strengthen and grow the power of the youth. For too long, we've known that there is an equity gap in those whose voices are heard in the city. The data we currently have is out of date and incomplete. Introduction 1057 will change that by requiring the DOE to report on which schools have clubs, courses, and publications. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Natalie Vitterman, and I'm a junior at Hunter College High School in Manhattan, represented by Councilmember Julie Menon. Thank you for being here today. For me, being a part of student journalism hasn't been much of a struggle, given that my school newspaper has a century-old program. Every day, I feel blessed to have such an amazing program with a dedicated advisor and a passionate group of students. However, when I was in middle school, the word newspaper was never even mentioned. When I got to my current school, though, I could feel the beating heart of student journalism all around me. From over a dozen publications to a biannual journalism conference, reporting is everywhere. Now, I'm a features editor at my school newspaper, where I've guided students through writing articles showcasing various people in the school community. But it isn't just the newspaper. My school's journalism elective gave me a space to share my thoughts and stay involved with stories about the world around me together with motivated students. The media is taking a central role in everyone's lives, and school journalism programs allow students to take a central role in the media. This introduction is not just another bureaucratic exercise. For students like my middle school peers, it's personal. We didn't know we could end up at a high school without a publication, without a place for our voices. This year, countless students interested in journalism won't have the information they need to find the right school. The DOE reports basketball teams, but not publications. Introduction 1057 will change that by giving 8th graders the data on which high schools currently offer these critical outlets for student voice. Access to journalism education should not be a privilege, it should be a right. Thank you.
My name is Caitlin Sitaram, and I'm currently a senior at Pace High School in the Lower East Side, represented by Christopher Marte. Thank you for joining us here today. Journalism found me by chance through a random elective placement. This fortunate circumstance sparked my passion for student journalism, and I have since served as editor-in-chief of our school newspaper for the past 2 years. Being a student journalist has become a fundamental part of my identity. This program has opened countless doors, including opportunities to serve as a student leader in the Youth Journalism Coalition and intern at the Paley Center for Media. While student journalism certainly enhances resumes, its true value lies in amplifying student voices and addressing crucial issues. In December 2023, 2 former PACE students wrote an article exposing the rotting flooring in the gymnasium shared between PACE and MS-131. Their reporting went beyond just highlighting water damage, drawing attention to air ventilation problems and lost opportunities for student athletes. According to Representative Marte, this article directly led to significant breakthrough, the June 25, 2024 announcement that the PACE MS-131 gym will receive a $750,000 renovation. This outcome demonstrates how journalism empowers students to uncover truth and bring real change to their communities. Now I am here before you as one of those empowered students, and this isn't my first time. In June, we were in this room to support Resolution 372, which calls on the DOE to support a student paper at every high school. In August, we were here again when the council passed the resolution, and we asked Speaker Adams at her press conference what she'll do to make it happen. She said, "We put our money where our mouth is." Now, passing Introduction 1057 is the first step for the council to take towards making this a reality.
Good afternoon. My name is Isabella Mason, and I'm a senior at Midwood High School, represented by Councilmember Farrah Lewis. Thank you for hearing our stories today. I grew up within the charter school system, and now attending a public high school that receives so much funding, the disparities between these two schools are night and day. My middle school, located in the middle of Brownsville, was devoid of resources. My high school, with computer carts and digital boards in every classroom and an abundance of college and career resources readily available. I am so fortunate to have access to both a journalism class and a school newspaper, both of which I am part of. These program options provide me an outlet to explore my passion for advocacy and social justice, and gain invaluable experience for my college and career future. For example, I'm working on an article about my experience working the polls for the 2024 presidential election and how inaccessible politics can be for those whose first language isn't English, the elderly, and the disabled. For schools that don't have access to such programs, students are left at a significant disadvantage, unable to explore a field vital to an active democracy. Throughout journalism's history, we've seen what stories get published and who gets published, with Black and brown writers consistently excluded. This disparity persists today, and we see it in New York City's high school system, where schools in low-income and predominantly minority communities don't receive adequate funding, meaning that crucial programs like journalism are left out of curriculum, not even an option for students. The urgency of expanding journalism programs across all New York City public high schools cannot be understated. This vision of journalism programs at all 500+ New York City public high schools can only come from close partnership with the DOE. The Coalition's Journalism for All initiative was sparked by students meeting with DOE leadership. 2 years later, we are seeing encouraging signals from DOE, particularly the Office of Student Pathways and several superintendent offices who encourage schools in their district to apply for the Journalism for All initiative. We are ready to walk the walk and expect DOE to join us in supporting Introduction 1057, demonstrating not only a commitment to our city's students, but a commitment to the future of our democracy. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Liza Greenberg, and I'm a senior at Bronx Science. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. For me, being a student journalist is central to who I am. I've worked on my school newspaper, The Science Survey, for the past 3 years, this year serving as editor-in-chief. And like Caitlin, I'm confident enough to be here today because of my school newspaper. Approaching students, teachers, and administrators, researching, asking tough questions, and advocating for important causes are the core pillars of scholastic journalism. This is also my 4th trip to City Hall for this issue. I have no doubt when the DOE affirms their commitment to student journalism and that the council has our back. I'm here today because hopefully it's time to take the next step and make moves. The boldest part of Introduction 1057 is the requirement for the DOE to report how much it costs to run a journalism program. Here's why it matters. The 30 Journalism for All schools will pioneer a model that can scale to 500. In 3 years, we'll have a proven, measurable, and replicable model ready for prime time. With the data from Introduction 1057, we'll have the tools we need to work with Chair Joseph, council leadership, the DOE, and private funders to establish a permanent funding solution. We understand the DOE might find this financial requirement ambitious, and as our track record demonstrates, we're prepared to work with them to produce this data and share it with the council. Thanks especially to Micah Peterson and Melissa Sisko, we're already looking forward to sitting down with the DOE shortly on January 8th to make sure that student journalism thrives, not just in 30 schools, but in every school across the city. Thank you.
This is where I get to be biased, right? This was our baby from day one. And look at us now. So this is a proud moment for me. I feel like a parent right now. This is a proud moment where we get to give you your voices, right? To share your stories, to tell the stories that matters to us from your lens, not ours, right? So thank you for bringing this up and for your relentless advocacy. Remind me so much of my younger version fighting for what you believe in and using your pen to make changes, right? Advocacy. It's important. So each and every one of you, I've already told you from day one, I am your champion, I am your ally, and I am your friend. So we're gonna get this to the finish line, and we do put our money where our mouth is. And I'm a big mouth on when it comes to young people and education. So being involved in your journalism program at your school impacted your educational experience, personal growth. Can you share any specific skills you've gained?
So I'm already passionate about social justice and advocacy, but I really feel like my student newspaper gives me the outlet to explore those options. I would have never had the opportunity to write about my experience working the 2024 presidential election polls, and I guess to give awareness to the communities that don't receive that kind of visibility, like the disabled, the elderly, and those whose first language isn't English. Student journalism and my school newspaper has been an integral part of who I am and my education, and it has inspired me to continue my passion for advocacy in college and in my future career.
Anyone else? She's a spokesperson.
I think for me specifically, being able to work on my school newspaper has taught me that like every single issue doesn't just have two sides, but so many more than that, and it's important to explore all of the different perspectives that people have. I'll just give one example, which is I was writing an article on the reinstatement of mid-year exams after they had been postponed due to COVID, and it was my first time meeting the principal. I got to interview the principal, get her take on why these exams were being implemented again. I talked to students who were talking about the stress they were experiencing. I talked to teachers who were figuring out how they were going to adequately prepare their students for these exams. And it kind of shows you like the whole ecosystem in a school and all the different stakeholders there are, and how we find solutions and we explore policies that affect multiple different people in many different ways. And now I think I can apply that thinking to the different problems in my life or things in my life that I encounter.
Any stories you guys covered stood out with you, stuck with you? I know you talk post-2024 elections. Any stories that stuck with you that you wrote?
So I wrote about the impact of yonder pouches on students in the school. And for a lot of people, I was surprised when a lot of people were willing to let go of their phones and willing to let go of, that little box that we always carry with a lot of information and a lot of things like that. So I think that was really important to me, because there's always a narrative that we're always addicted to our phones, but a lot of people were like, no, I improved without my phone. I became a better scholar, and I think that always really stuck with me, that, we're willing to stop when we want to.
I think that's music to New York City Public Schools' ears. I'm just saying. Thank you all. Thank you for being here.
Some people from Transformative Schools, Brotherhood, Sisterhood, something.
Yes, those are my people.
Oh, yeah, they're
Arielle Athan, am I saying that right? Forgive me if I don't. Olivia Blake, am I saying that right? Olivia? Oh, hi. Mimi Shelton. Welton Balvinuna, am I saying this right? If I butchered your name, please forgive me. Cree Griffins. Where's Cree? Hi, Cree. Nazira Fair. That's another bias. I didn't wear my t-shirt today. Thank you.
There's one person that needs the double time, right? You're gonna just do that. All right. Okay, no problem. Oh. One of the people from the of Sister Soul is going to translation, so they're just gonna get double time for that. So they can begin. You may begin your testimony. You can start with Orly Athen.
Good afternoon, Chair Joseph. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
So my name is Orly Athen, and I'm a clinical psychologist, researcher, and faculty member at Teachers College, Columbia University. I specialize in sexual and reproductive health, co-founded the Sexuality, Women, and Gender Project, and oversee a well-attended professional development program for teachers on our New York City campus and nationally online. Lastly, as a scholar, I've promoted concepts like matrescence and reproductive identity to provide a more empowered, strength-based perspective that has resonated with both the scientific community and the general public. But I'm here today to offer my testimony and ongoing expertise as you consider how to best strengthen this critical component of the New York City health education. Over the past decade, I've witnessed firsthand the positive progress made locally, from the early efforts to bring sex ed to the attention of legislators to improved initiatives of the Office of School Wellness, as we've heard today, and listen closely to the voices of hundreds of New York and out-of-state teachers that I've studied. I therefore welcome the opportunity to share what I've heard from them and continue the important discussion beyond these walls. I came to this advocacy work after many years of listening closely to people in crisis, actually, as a psychologist, grappling with things like interpersonal violence, postpartum depression, and they often repeated the all too familiar refrain, "Why didn't anybody tell me?" They felt not only unsupported during these critical moments, but also unprepared. The increasing mental and physical health burdens, which you know firsthand, have led to a costly cascade of public health issues. This led me to trace the problem to what I firmly believe is one of its root causes, a lack of education. And in Teachers College, we say that education has a hand in uplifting human suffering. It is one of the main ways that we can help. So, comprehensive sexual and reproductive health education is essential for fostering, as you know, lifelong healthy relationships, reproductive well-being, and informed decision-making. It's not, however, just about preventing teen pregnancies or raising awareness about STIs, the plumbing approach of anatomy, right? We want socio-emotional learning. We want to equip young people with lifelong literacy. This means giving them the knowledge and the skills to find the right information, distinguish fact from fiction, and apply that wisdom throughout the many twists and turns their journey will inevitably take. It is about instilling long-term thinking, not just short-term postponement, helping them build a life of intention, understanding themselves as whole people with agency, and navigating their choices with confidence and care. These are the clearly laid out targets outlined also by the World Health Organization's Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the National Sex Ed Standards. Ensuring access to comprehensive sexual and reproductive health education upholds the dignity, the rights, and the well-being of all people. To make this vision a reality more locally, I recommend the following actions. And to clarify, we've heard again and again the following message that I kind of say in my classroom: sex ed is just a slice of the health ed pie, and we often leave it off the plate. Is that it? Okay, I'll keep on going. Thank you. I also agree that sex ed is a lens through which we can learn other academic classes like history and geography. So I'm going to focus my recommendations on sexual and reproductive health topics specifically. We need to increase the dose and the frequency. I think the DOE has laid out a strong scope and sequence modeled on national standards, but I often wish we had more than one semester or more. We do need to continue tracking the implementation of sex education specifically, rather than health education in general, and ensure the standardized training of all health educators, as you've heard here. We're also here to provide support for curricular development and workshops. So on a personal note, if I can just take one 30-second more point, since this is my specific area of expertise, I think we actually need to do even better on repro ed, not only just talking about sex ed. The tide of change is here for reproductive health. We can no longer afford to kick the can down the road. It's an emerging issue. The rise of infertility, advancements in reproductive technologies, LGBTQ family building, more childless by choice adults opting out, as well as rollbacks to our basic rights of access to self-determined reproductive health care. We do not simply give enough time and space for our students to explore how intimately reproductive health is connected with sexual health and their overall life satisfaction. I will stop there. Thank you for your time, and I'll submit an updated version of this electronically for the record. Thank you for the extra time.
Hello, council members. Thank you for having me today. My name is Olivia Blake. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm here representing Transformative Schools. I serve on the board of that organization. We exist as a progressive education community centering trans joy and social justice. Our mission is to support trans futures by uplifting the lives of trans children, trans educators, and families touched by transness. Excuse me. I'm here today to support Resolution 94. In addition to the myriad of benefits we've talked about today, I would also like to add to the comments to the person to my left here to say that we at Transformative Schools believe that comprehensive sex education for all K through 12 students is a vital part of destigmatizing queer and trans identities in our public schools. And I speak about this not from my experience as an educator, but my experience as a mother. I'm a trans mother of 3 children, and I've had to seek out over the years age-appropriate, medically accurate sex education materials to inform my children about my journey in my transition. And I thought I'd bring along a resource today for you. This is my daughter's favorite book from our shelf. It's called the Everybody Book. It's geared towards children for ages 8 to 12. And I want to show you her favorite page because I think it underscores why comprehensive sex education is so important. This page At the bottom of it has a variety of different folks with different bodies, of different abilities, from different races, who exist in a variety of different gender identities. My daughter loves this page because she can see our family here. And I think that it normalizes her experience with queer people in her life and queer people in our circle. And I think that all students, cis or trans, deserve the resources necessary to understand themselves, their peers, and the communities they live in their full humanity. And I believe that unless we have a requirement that this won't be prioritized or given priority in terms of communicating to our students. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, Chair Joseph. Well, close to evening now, Chair Joseph, as well as members of this joint committee of the Education Committee and Women and Gender Equity Committees. I too, like Olivia, am a board member of Transformative Schools, and I'm here in support of Bill 94, or Resolution 94 today.
Sorry, can you just say your name for the record?
I'm going right on into it. My name is Mimi Shelton, she, her pronouns. I am a Black woman of transgender experience. Although I am currently a law student at the CUNY School of Law, I have a professional background in research, direct service work, grant management, and education. Specifically, I was a middle school English and history teacher in Philadelphia and New York schools for 4.5 years, before, of course, my pivots. The lack of comprehensive knowledge around gender and sexual identity in schools stagnates the maturation and intellectual development of youth, shrinking their worldviews in schools to heterosexual and cisgender norms that often lead those questioning their sexual or gender identities into a mindset of inferiority. For cisgender heterosexual youth, this absence of education allows them to model the behavior of dominant society that bullies, isolates, depreciates, attacks, and attempts to erase transgender and queer people from existence in professional, academic, and social space. It stagnates their critical thinking abilities and stops them from seeing a world of people who have, do, and will continue to exist outside of their miseducation. And there is much to learn, and we, as queer and trans people, are more than HIV and sex. According to the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network's 2021 National Climate Survey, queer and transgender youth frequently face compounded sexist, transphobic, and homophobic discrimination that leads to poorer mental health outcomes, worse academic performance, physical assault, verbal assault, sexual assault, absenteeism, and higher dropout rates. These rates are disparately higher among BIPOC transgender youth, especially those who are Black. As a Black transgender woman, I know all too well that educational discrimination and lack of access does not stop at the schoolhouse door. Take, for example, the Transgender New Yorkers and the New York Department of Labor's 2023 Transgender and Gender Nonconforming Non-Binary Report, TGNC-NB reports. I'll spare you details for other statistics, but one of the most startling for me is that 33.1% of transgender New Yorkers did not graduate from high school, as opposed to 12.3% of cisgender New Yorkers. Which could explain why, in the same report, the DOL found that the rate of unemployment for transgender New Yorkers is over twice that of cisgender individuals throughout the state. I am here today to support Quadira Coles and Girls for Gender Equity as they lead this work at the city and state level. As a former teacher, future lawyer, and passionate advocate for transgender and queer youth, I am invested in the present lack of inclusive gender and sexual identity education. Youth learn to model the world around them in schools, and they perpetuate these models of behavior throughout their adult lives. I cannot stand by without fighting against a future for all youth that would devalue the lives, histories, stories, and deservedness of transgender and queer people. Therefore, I urge you to please approve Resolution 94 to ensure that the NYC DOE is not erasing some of our most vulnerable, marginalized young people, and then pass these and other information requesting resolutions to provide us with data to prove who is being unfairly punished. This will allow us to make targeted interventions in schools to limit harm to students. Students can't learn in schools when they don't feel safe and seen at school. Thank you for your time.
We requested double time to be able to translate. Thank you.
Hola, mi nombre es Wellington Balbuena y estoy aquí testificando a voz de mi comunidad y de todas las escuelas de Nueva York para que nosotros los estudiantes podamos obtener una buena educación sobre el cuidado de las relaciones sexuales y de cómo evitar embarazo a temprana edad. Yo creo que podemos evitar muchas enfermedades de transmisión sexual si nos dan la verdadera enseñanza que necesitamos. No tener acceso a la educación implica tener muchas consecuencias negativas si no nos dan enseñanzas sobre el anticonceptivo o infecciones de transmisiones sexuales. Podríamos ser unas de esas personas que luchan contra estas enfermedades. Por ejemplo, también saber sobre estos temas ayuda a que si en algún momento nos hacen algún daño o intento de violación, podemos hacer algo al respecto o quejarnos, evitando así cualquier intento de violación hacia nosotros. Además, hay muchas consecuencias negativas para las personas que no le enseñan sobre la comunidad LGBTQ, tal como ser homofóbico, discriminar a las personas de la comunidad y llevarlo a un punto donde esas personas pueden sentirse oprimidos y llegar hasta atentar contra su vida, poniendo su salud mental en peligro. Esta es la razón por la que las escuelas deberían brindar educación sexual integral para evitar todos estos tipos de enfermedades y embarazo a temprana edad. Estamos a tiempo de cambiar todo lo que nos afecta en nuestro diario vivir, porque juntos hacemos el cambio. Por eso es que hoy yo y mis compañeros y las escuelas del estado de Nueva York pedimos al ayuntamiento a que apoye la resolución 94 para mostrar que la ciudad de Nueva York apoya el proyecto de ley integral en la educación sexual. Gracias. Gracias.
Hello, my name is Wellington Balbuena, and I'm here to testify with dignity on behalf of my community and all the schools in New York so that we as students can obtain a good education on how we can take care of sexual relations and how to avoid pregnancies at an early age. I believe we can prevent many diseases if given the necessary education we need. Without having this education, we can have negative consequences if we are not taught about contraception and sexually transmitted infections. We may be at risk of compromising our health. For example, knowing about these issues helps us so that if at any time we are harmed or raped, we can tell our parents or do something about it, avoiding any attempt of violence towards us. In addition, there are many negative consequences for people who are not taught about the LGBTQ community, such as being homophobic, discriminating against people in the community, and taking it to a point where that person can feel oppressed and even attempt to take their own life, putting their mental health in danger. This is the reason why schools should provide comprehensive sex education to avoid all these types of diseases and teenage pregnancy. We have time to change everything that affects us in our daily lives because together we can make the change. That is why I and all of my classmates in schools in New York asked the City Council to support Resolution 94 to show that the City of New York supports a comprehensive bill on sexual education in New York. Thank you. I will read my testimony now. Good afternoon, members of the Committee on Education and the Committee on Women and Gender Equity. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Nasira Fair, and I work with the brilliant young people who are sitting next to me as a facilitator and organizer with the Liberation Program at the Brotherhood Sister Soul, a community-based organization that has been training, organizing, and educating to challenge inequity and champion opportunity for over 25 years. With a focus on Black and Latinx youth, BroSis is where young people claim the power of their history, identity, and community to build the future they want to see. BroSis provides around-the-clock support and wraparound programming, making space for Black and Latinx young people to examine their roots, define their stories, and awaken their legacy. I want to thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you in support of Resolution 94. At the Brotherhood Sister Soul, we believe in empowering young people with knowledge of self, which is why we stand in support of comprehensive sexuality education. When we asked our members why they want comprehensive sex ed, they expressed the desire to have access to information that would help keep them safe, encourage them to make healthy choices, as well as deepen their connections with LGBTQ peers and loved ones. We support advocates who define comprehensive sex ed as the implementation of a curriculum that is medically accurate, age-appropriate, and inclusive. Comprehensive sex ed helps foster a school environment where all students thrive and experience emotional safety. A member of our liberation program, Emily Marte, wrote, "Sex ed could help people and kids learn more about LGBTQ+ people and LGBTQ+ families. Youth can learn about the many ways to create families that are different from stereotypical families. Sex ed could also help kids with their sexuality, and it could help them have a safe space where with people they can relate to. We can teach them, and we can teach ourselves how to break away from societal stereotypes about our bodies, sex, and sexuality." If one youth testimony isn't enough, another youth member, Alpha Diallo, shared, "Growing up as a Black kid in Harlem, I can only imagine how things may have been different if I knew from an early age just how safe and respected I was supposed to feel in my own home and in relationships. Joining the Liberation Program really opened my eyes to some form of sex education. I just wish that this kind of education was a part of my schooling and not just once a week, but a continuing foundational part of our education. If every student had this knowledge, it could really make a difference in how we understand our bodies, our relationships, and how to move through life confidently and safety." It is time for the New York State Legislature to pass and Governor Kathy Hochul to sign Assembly Bill A4604 for a safer, healthier future for New York youth. Thank you.
Thank you all for sharing. Thank you.
Great. We have one more youth member.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I got a little emotional because this topic hits different for me. So,
Huh? Say that again?
Emotions hit me because this topic hits a little different. But yeah.
Take your time.
Hello and good afternoon, Council. Thank you for taking your time out of the day to listen to our testimonies. My name is Kyriakins Griffin, and I am a fourth-year member of the Liberation Program at the Brotherhood Sister Soul, and I am a senior at Repertory Company High School for Performing Arts. I came here today to urge the City Council members to support Resolution 94, which would send a strong message to our New York State legislator that New York City supports comprehensive sex ed for all students. I believe comprehensive sex education is more important because children, adolescents, and young adults need to know how to maintain their physical health so that they can make informed choices and set boundaries when necessary. Many of us feel confused by the changes that we experience in our body and that no one told us that what we should expect as we go. Some people are lucky to have parents to teach them about their bodies, but not everyone has the time or the knowledge to guide us when it comes to talking about sex. Additionally, you must recognize the mental, sometimes physical harms that many young women, including myself, have experienced. Some young women aren't even told what to expect when their menstrual cycle comes, being afraid of something that naturally occurs in our body. In school, I would like to learn on ways how to keep my body protected. I've seen so many young women in my life experience teen pregnancy, not knowing what choices they have in regards to their bodies. It is time for New York to pass a comprehensive sex ed bill. The time is long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you. It takes a lot of courage, and thank you for sharing and speaking for young people, right? And that's who I believe in fighting. Brother Sister Soul is one of my favorite orgs. They know that. Thank you, all of you, for the work that you do, right? And in making sure our young people feel seen, most importantly, safe. Thank you. Elsie Ben Yusa. If I say it wrong, forgive me, please. Molly Janak. Eric Naranjo. Samantha Scholar. Elizabeth Zimmerman. And Marie Moss. Madam's having.
You may begin your testimony when you're ready. You can start with Elise.
Good afternoon or good evening. My name is Elise Benusa, and I'm the Government Relations and Policy Manager at Planned Parenthood of Greater New York. I'd like to thank Committee Chair Joseph and Lewis for holding this important oversight hearing. Planned Parenthood of Greater New York has been a leading provider of sexual and reproductive health services in New York City for over 100 years, conducting over 70,000 patient visits per year. In 2023, PBGNY engaged 23,000 individuals through our education and community engagement programs. Our programs provide tools to help our participants make informed decisions and lead healthy and safe lives. Our experience at PBGNY as a sexual health education and service provider shows us firsthand the gaps that remain in New York City's health education, which significantly impacts young people's health and well-being. Research has consistently shown that comprehensive sexual health education works. Comprehensive sexuality education includes the teaching of anatomy, physiology, puberty, pregnancy and reproduction, STI and HIV prevention and treatment, as well as gender, respect for others' values, cultures, and identities, positive body image, healthy relationships and consent, anti-bullying, and anti-intimate partner violence measures. PBGNY supports Resolution 94, which calls on the New York State Legislature to pass and Governor Hochul to sign a companion bill which would require comprehensive sexuality instruction for students in grades 5 through 12, which addresses age and developmentally appropriate physical, mental, emotional, and social dimensions of human sexuality and reflects the national sexuality education standards. We want to thank Councilmember Hanif for sponsoring and championing this bill. During a time when the federal government has increased its efforts to curb access to sexuality education, it's imperative that New York adopt measures that ensure students have access to sexuality education to promote positive youth development, healthy relationships, and communication, which is crucial in helping young people to make healthy life decisions. We applaud New York City's commitment to ensuring youth have access to comprehensive sexuality education, and we look forward to continuing to work with the council to break down the barriers New Yorkers face in realizing safe and healthy lives. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for convening this very important hearing on Resolution 94. My name is Sam Scaller. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm the Senior Campus Coordinator at the New York City Alliance Against Sexual Assault. I'm also a certified sexuality educator with the Sexual Health Alliance. The mission of the New York City Alliance Against Sexual Assault is to prevent sexual violence and reduce the harm it causes through public education, prevention programming, advocacy for survivors, and the pursuit of legal and policy changes. In doing so, the Alliance works to disrupt systems and institutions that unfortunately can re-traumatize survivors when they most need our support. I am here to stress that comprehensive sex education is not just medically accurate health education, it is sexual violence prevention. Studies show that comprehensive sex education is one of the strongest forms of primary sexual violence prevention for youth. For the past decade, I have worked with tens of thousands of college and university students, 13% of whom experience sexual assault each academic year, a devastating reality compounded by the fact that the majority of these students have already faced sexual violence before even stepping foot on campus. Last academic year alone, out of New York State's 1.1 million undergraduate and graduate student population, approximately 148,000 students endured sexual assault. This staggering figure does not even account for the others subjected to verbal and digital forms of sexual violence that are currently on the rise. Year after year, I've encountered third-year law students struggling to define affirmative consent, first-year CUNY students unsure if they have the right to say no to sex, and thousands of disclosures of sexual violence in all of its forms. While campus sexual violence prevention education is critically important, it's like treating the symptoms of an illness without addressing the root cause. A systematic failure to provide comprehensive sexuality education before students arrive on campus. This failure leaves millions of New York students unprepared and vulnerable, setting them up for very preventable harm. Amid a troubling political landscape where accused perpetrators of sexual violence hold positions of power, CUNY is shutting down gender justice centers all across the city. Cybersexual violence is on the rise, and anti-trans rhetoric is surging nationally. In this climate, the need for comprehensive sex education has never been more urgent. Requiring scientifically accurate and inclusive comprehensive sex ed can significantly reduce rates of sexual harm and set young people up for success in making informed and empowered decisions about their bodies. If New York is truly committed to supporting sexual assault survivors, it must take decisive action to prevent sexual violence from occurring in the first place. Passing this bill to make comprehensive sexuality education mandatory across the state is a critical step in that effort. Thank you so much for your time today.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Ramirez Naranjo, and I am 19-year-old NYU college student and a Richie Jackson LGBTQ+ fellow in public policy at Gay Men's Health Crisis, GMHC. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I stand in strong support of Resolution 94A, sponsored by Councilmember Hanif, urging the New York State Legislature to pass and for the governor to sign A4604 alongside a companion bill in the state Senate to amend the education law regarding comprehensive sexuality education in schools. The bill is crucial for enhancing sexual health education at the city level and plays a vital role in ending the HIV epidemic. Today, I will outline reasons why this act is vital to GMHC and the communities we serve. But first, the opt-out provision for HIV education needs to be removed. Section 7 of A6404 allows parents to exempt students from HIV prevention education, an outdated policy that risks denying New York City students life-saving information. Singling out HIV education fuels stigma, demeans, and ignores its urgency, especially for LGBTQ+ students already facing heightened risks of harassment, violence, and homelessness, further marginalizing LGBTQ+ youth. GMHC strongly supports the removal of this exemption to ensure all students receive inclusive, accurate education around HIV while respecting parental choice. This change is vital to dismantling stigma and fostering a safe, inclusive environment for all. This bill will increase the good health outcomes and decrease STI transmission. CDC studies consistently show that states with comprehensive sexual education have lower rates of STIs, including HIV. Medically accurate, age-appropriate programs empower youth to make informed decisions, reducing risk of infections and unintended pregnancies. Adopting these programs in New York aligns with public health best practices. This bill will help prevent sexual violence and increase student safety. Resolution 94A empowers youth to recognize and report sexual abuse by teaching consent, boundaries, and healthy relationships, allowing students to thrive. Research from Columbia University's SHIFT project shows that comprehensive sex education can lower the risk of sexual assault, youth dating violence, and lower STI rates in school. Resolution 94A is a commitment to safety and equity. Access to life-saving information, especially for at-risk youth, is crucial to ending the HIV epidemic. With rising attacks on LGBTQ youth, nationally, legislatively, and physically, inclusive education is more urgent than ever. GMHC urges the Council to pass Resolution 94A and advocate for policies that protect all youth. Thank you again.
Good afternoon. My name is Molly Senek, and I am testifying on behalf of Center for Independence of the Disabled New York. So in 2021, the United States Bureau of Justice Statistics published a report that said people with disabilities are 4 times likelier to experience sexual assault or violence in their lifetime compared with non-disabled people. This is a low number compared to other studies. In 2018, NPR found that there are certain demographics of the disabled population who are 12 times likelier to experience sexual violence. In 2018, the University of Michigan did a study that found that 40% of women with disabilities will experience sexual or physical violence in their lifetime. And in 2015, a study done by Wilczynski et al. Found that 40 to 70% of women with disabilities will experience sexual abuse before the age of 18, as will 30% of boys. And what is more startling is that this data is not only consistently documented across many other studies, it is also most likely a severe undercount. People with disabilities have been reported to, despite being at least 4 times likelier to experience sexual violence, half as likely to report it. Comprehensive sex ed is a sexual violence prevention measure because the reason these numbers are so high usually do not have anything to do with physical disabilities, or rather physical vulnerabilities, but rather, and they're born from an education. People with disabilities receive a systemic but informal education that they need to endure their own discomfort. People with disabilities are taught that non-disabled people often need to help them, meaning that they are taught that people will be touching their bodies without their permission. They learn that people are more willing to accommodate them when they are polite or obliging, which means that they are less likely to question things or complain. They are taught that there is safety, social safety, in saying yes to things that other people are saying yes to, even when they do not necessarily feel comfortable with that. They are taught, even by those who mean well and do not intend this lesson, that their discomfort makes other people uncomfortable and are conditioned to believe that alleviating other people's discomfort is not only their responsibility, but should be their priority. When informal education is this dangerous, formal education is life-saving. So Resolution 94 advocates for a New York statewide mandating requirement that schools teach comprehensive sex ed, starting in kindergarten and continuing through the 12th grade. The evidence-based curriculum is based on medically accurate and age-appropriate programs that refute the narrative that one's discomfort must be endured. Comprehensive sexuality education means that students are taught about not only disease prevention and contraception, but also about consent, communication, human development, healthy relationships, and personal boundaries. Students are taught about bodily autonomy, how to recognize it, how to voice it, and how to value it. The more classrooms in which comprehensive sex ed is taught, the more effective that education will be, because the majority of students with disabilities spend more than 80% of their school day in general education classrooms. As of now in New York State, as we all heard today, those classrooms are not required to provide sex ed, at least beyond certain instruction in HIV and AIDS. These bills are often called controversial, but what is indisputable is that there exists a population that has a 70% chance of being sexually abused or assaulted before reaching adulthood. There is no controversy about the fact that this, one of the highest rates of sexual assault in America, is the reality for young people with disabilities, and it is avoidable. So thank you so much for your time and effort, and we very much support the passage of this resolution.
Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Zimmerman, and I'm a community organizer for the National Council of Jewish Women New York. Thank you for holding this hearing and giving NCJW New York and these other organizations an opportunity to speak about the need for comprehensive sex ed in New York State. We're proud to join Girls for Gender Equity in support of Resolution 94A, calling upon the State Assembly to pass Assembly Bill 4604, ensuring that all New York youth have access to medically accurate, age-appropriate, and inclusive sex education. As previously stated, New York State has no requirement for comprehensive sex education in schools. Therefore, there's a patchwork system where students are taught, what they're taught, if anything, depends on where they live. When offered, the curriculum is often incomplete, inaccurate, or biased. This is inherently unfair and leads to inequities in the information and skills that youth learn. Currently, many programs stress abstinence, and instruction about consent is not required. There's no evidence that abstinence-only programs are effective in convincing students to delay sexual activity, and students in these programs are less likely than their peers to use protection when they do become sexually active. Comprehensive sex ed has been shown to delay the onset of sexual activity, and when teens do become sexually active, students who've been taught comprehensive sex ed use birth control more consistently and have a reduced risk of teen pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections. Abstinence-only education is historically tied to conservative religious convictions and represents that particular religious viewpoint about sexuality. In part because of government support they receive, religious conservatives have come to dominate the public discourse on faith and sexuality. Many abstinence-only programs rely on shame, negative stereotypes about women, and inaccurate statistics meant to scare or mislead students. They ignore issues of sexual orientation, healthy relationships, sexual abuse, and stigmatize sexually active students. Because there's no universal curriculum throughout the state, many students may only receive information consistent with this conservative religious viewpoint. Instead of medically accurate and comprehensive facts about contraception, abortion, and sexuality, students may receive false or exaggerated information about contraceptive failure and little to no information about abortion, sexual orientation, or gender identity. We must counter this perception that the religious right speaks for all people of faith. In contrast, many religions believe that it's imperative that our youth approach decisions about sexual behavior equipped with both accurate information about sexual health, including objective facts about reproduction, abortion, STIs, contraception, and sexual orientation, as well as an understanding of sexuality in the context of healthy, committed relationships. A comprehensive sex ed curriculum addresses all of these issues. As with the narrative around abortion, birth control, and recently IVF, this conservative religious approach to sex ed ignores the fact that other religions favor more progressive, comprehensive sex education for everyone. All young people deserve to have the information and skills to protect their health and be free from stigma and shame. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you to Chair Joseph and to Chair Louis for the opportunity to speak today, and all the members of the committees of Education and Women Gender Equity. I just wanted to say how inspired I was, first of all, by all the young
Sorry,
people.
could you just state your name for the record?
My name is Mari Moss, and I represent We Love Harlem Initiative and mothers of children in the school system. I was very inspired by the young people who were here for the journalism, so I just wanted to say that, and also wanted to say I'm really inspired also by the education of sex trafficking as well, so I also want to support that initiative. But my favorite saying is prevention is far better than the cure, and I'm a very strong advocate of parent involvement in the schools, and that includes in the education process. So parents are the primary stakeholders in their children's lives, and their involvement is essential, particularly in matters of health education, including sex health education. Our school system has a troubling history of parental alienation, often excluding parents from decisions regarding their children's well-being in educational curriculum. Because of this, I can support Resolution 94, the sexual education portion of Resolution 94, if all parents are fully informed about the curriculum being presented, the qualifications of the teachers delivering it, the class size, the timing of the instruction, the methods of presentation, and all other details and parameters involved. There can be no substitute for parental involvement or information, involvement, consent, and approval when it comes to this curriculum. Parents must be engaged and educated through community education councils, community boards, the United Federation of Teachers Parents Groups, wellness advisory councils, assemblies at the schools, school leadership teams, and other parent organizations to ensure families are well informed about the curriculum's objectives and benefits. Parents should also be provided with tools and resources on how to have meaningful conversations with their own children about their needs and development, reinforcing that teachers are not substitutes for parents in this critical area. Furthermore, the curriculum must address domestic violence awareness, methods to avoid human trafficking, and strategies for identifying and responding to these issues. Lessons must be age appropriate and developmentally suitable, with clear guidelines on how content is tailored to different age groups. Also, transparency in how this is implemented is non-negotiable. The success of such programs depend on data-driven accountability. Schools must collect and monitor youth risk behavior data to track outcomes such as reductions in sex rates or STDs, unintended pregnancies, incidents of abuse and trafficking. These findings should be shared with parents at the school level, empowering families to make informed decisions and advocate for continuous improvements in the curriculum and its delivery. I wholeheartedly support providing proactive, life-saving information to students, but it must be delivered with explicit input, permission, and consent of parents, along with regular reviews at least quarterly to ensure ongoing transparency, accountability, and alignment with community values. Collaboration between parents, educators, community boards, and other stakeholders is essential to ensure our children receive the education and protection they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room who wishes to testify? Please fill out a witness slip from the Sergeant at Arms desk in the back. We will now turn to our virtual testimony. Our first panelist, Aliyah Ansari.
Good afternoon, members and staff of the Committees on Education and Women and Gender Equity. My name is Aliyah Ansari, and I'm the Teen Health Strategist for the New York Civil Liberties Union. I'm also a parent with over a decade of public health experience. I'm speaking in strong support of Resolution 94, 2024. As we know, education is a cornerstone of informed, healthy, and thriving communities. Comprehensive sexuality education equips young people with the knowledge and skills they need to make responsible decisions about their health and relationships. It provides age-appropriate, scientifically accurate information on topics like personal boundaries, health relationships, consent and reproductive health, topics critical for navigating today's world.
It's called Growing Up Feeling Good.
Research shows that comprehensive sexuality education programs improve outcomes for children, reducing rates of unintended pregnancies, sexually transmitted infections, and incidents of sexual violence. Beyond health benefits, this instruction fosters a more inclusive environment by addressing diversity in gender, sexual orientation, and cultural perspectives, helping to build empathy and reduce bullying. Opposition to sex ed often stems from misunderstanding and a lack of transparency. To be clear, comprehensive sexuality education means providing developmentally appropriate lessons tailored to the student's age and needs, whether that's learning about personal safety in kindergarten or understanding consent and reproductive health in high school. New York State does not currently require comprehensive sexuality education. This leads to some districts using inappropriate materials for instruction and some districts not providing any instruction at all. Unfortunately, efforts to gain transparency around the current sex education curriculum in New York public schools have faced significant delays. While New York City has implemented a mandate for schools to teach sex ed, the district has not been forthcoming with its materials. Through its pro bono partner, the NYCLU submitted a FOIA request to New York City public schools over a year ago, seeking access to the curriculum and information regarding its instruction. Yet we have still not received a complete response. This lack of transparency underscores the need of accountability and ensures that all stakeholders can have an informed understanding of the current educational framework, both in New York City and beyond. New York has the opportunity to set a standard of education for its students' health and well-being. By aligning with the national sexuality education standards, this legislation ensures our students receive the highest quality instruction, preparing them to lead healthy, informed, and compassionate lives. I urge you to pass this resolution and advocate for legislation that prioritizes the well-being and future of our children. Thank you.
Is there anyone else on Zoom who wishes to testify? Please use the raise hand feature.
Wait a second. No hands, right? No hands? No hands, go ahead.
No hands. Thank you to all of our public panelists. This concludes our hearing.